defiantly, with a smug look on his face as he looked at me. "Then you're fired and can leave the company." I confronted Ryan with my true feelings. I sighed softly and looked at Ryan with cold eyes. Ryan, seeing my gaze, tensed up visibly. Anxiety spread across his face. "My name is Kelly, 44 years old. I run a company that manufactures vehicles and parts for transportation. The company was founded by my grandfather, making me the third generation. It's a family-run business. Originally, I had no intention of taking over the company and wanted to lead a normal life. I wasn't particularly good at school and planned to find a job at a general company after graduating. In fact, I landed a job at an IT company. However, when I was 26, my parents died in an unexpected accident. I have an older brother who loves research and is always holed up in his graduate lab. My father left a will stating that I was to become the next president of the company. After that, it felt like I was on a roller coaster. I quit my current job and joined my father's company. The role of president was temporarily filled by the executive vice president, and I worked hard to learn the job. I worked tirelessly, sparing no moment even for sleep, to learn everything about the products we made and how to manage the business. At first, people treated me delicately, as if I were a delicate flower, but gradually they opened up to me. Gradually, I found the work interesting and became president at the age of 40. I've lived for my work, dedicating my life to the company. As everyone around me got married, I didn't have a single boyfriend. I always prioritized work over leisure. I traveled domestically and internationally for the company, so much so that I hardly remember holidays like Christmas or Thanksgiving. Because of this, my relatives started to nag me about finding a successor. Every time I met relatives at gatherings, they would insensitively tell me to hurry up or I won't be able to have children. "Aren't you lonely?" some would ask. I knew arguing would only bring more nagging. So I just smiled wryly and left the conversation quickly. Thanks to dedicating my life to the company, our performance steadily improved. Incorporating IT played a big part in this. I started to have a bit more free time and could enjoy my leisure time. That's when I met Ryan, and we met through bowling. A client recommended it, and I took it up lightly, finding it suited my personality and got quite into it. I even bought my own ball and shoes and started participating in tournaments. Ryan was someone I frequently saw at the bowling alley. He was fun to talk to, taught me many things I didn't know, and we even entered tournaments as a pair. After going out to eat several times, Ryan confessed his feelings on one of those occasions, and we started dating. Ryan is the same age as me, but often looks younger, sometimes even in his 20s. I've often been mistaken for his older sister. "You probably think I'm unreliable," he would say, looking embarrassed every time. Ryan has many hobbies. From baseball to soccer and golf, he not only likes watching sports but also playing them. Influenced by him, I took up golf. It wasn't just sports, he also took me to concerts and theaters. Ryan introduced me to a world I never knew, and I became completely captivated by him. The time I spent with Ryan was very stimulating and fun for me. My first boyfriend at 44. It wouldn't be strange for me to feel elated. Amidst these light-hearted days, Ryan suddenly said something unexpected. "Would you meet my parents?" I was at a loss for words at his sudden request. "If I'm gonna marry, it's gonna be you, Kelly. I want to introduce you to my parents." It has been about 2 months since we officially started dating. It felt a bit early, but I wasn't young anymore. I wasn't without my anxieties. But I was also happy. I had no intention of refusing. A week later, we visited Ryan's family home. The house was neatly arranged, with a faintly pleasant smell. In the living room, Ryan's dad and mom welcomed us. Ryan's mom had an elegant air about her, with her hair dyed a beautiful shade of purple. "My son is lucky to be dating someone as adorable as you," she said with a beaming smile. "You're truly a wonderful young lady." Receiving such praise made me feel a tickle of unease on my back. Ryan's parents continued to shower me with compliments until I blushed. Ryan, sitting beside me, looked proud. Right? Finding someone like her at 44 is a real catch. Ryan said with a laugh, but I felt a bit uncomfortable with his wording. A sense of unease began to spread in my chest. But Ryan and his parents were all smiles, making me think that getting along with such lovely in-laws after marriage would be possible. The anxiety I felt earlier vanished. However, I noticed Ryan calling his parents mommy and daddy. I used to call my parents mommy and daddy too, but is it common for adult men to do the same? It seems rare. Perhaps I'm just out of touch with societal norms. Having lost my parents early and being focused on work, I admit I'm not well-versed in social conventions. I decided not to dwell on it, assuming it's just me being unconventional. Surely, Ryan must have a good relationship with his parents. Ryan often praised his mother, which is usually a good thing. However, when we were talking about cooking, Ryan made a comment that felt off. Mommy's meatloaf is the best in the world. He even slightly belittled the meat and potatoes I made. Kelly's meatloaf just isn't as good as Mommy's. Hearing this, I couldn't manage a smile. Perfect, you should get the recipe from her, Ryan said in a tone different from usual. Why was he being so authoritative? Unaware of my ambiguous expression, he exchanged smiles with his mother. Ryan's mother started writing down the meat and potatoes recipe. With this, Kelly, you can make something similar to Mommy's. I was unsure whether to be happy or not. My expression turned into the vague smile I reserve for relatives. As the evening grew darker and it was time to leave, the conversation turned to marriage. I'd marry you right now if I could. It'd make life easier, especially since freelancing doesn't pay much, Ryan said, shocking me. What? Freelancer? My eyes widened. Ryan had said he worked in sales. I hadn't told him about my job either. I just worked at a company making parts. I was embarrassed to say I was the CEO, but I had no idea Ryan was a freelancer. Stunned, Ryan snapped at me. You thought just because he's 44, right? There's a deep reason behind it. Apparently, Ryan's mother has always been frail and sickly. Moreover, 2 years ago, his father became seriously ill and needed care. Ryan, who was working in sales at a printing company, quit his job to take care of his father and became a freelancer to manage his time for caregiving. It's tough on Mommy alone. I just wanted to be there for my parents, Ryan said, tearing up. I listened solemnly. I thought it'd be okay to continue freelancing for their sake. Glancing at his parents, Ryan nodded. Daddy's been doing better lately, so I'm considering re-entering the workforce, especially now that I'm marrying Kelly. I gotta step up, he said, sniffling. I felt ashamed for feeling disappointed upon learning he was a freelancer. Ryan had simply prioritized his parents over his job. What a kind and warm-hearted person he is. All my previous anxieties and discomfort had completely disappeared. A few days later, I made a suggestion to Ryan. Why don't you try applying for a position at my company? Ryan seemed surprised by my sudden proposal. Only if you're okay with it, of course. I was careful not to pressure him. Ryan seemed hesitant about working at the same company as me. Our sales department is actually short on people. It would really help if you could join. I chose my words carefully, not wanting to hurt his pride. You'd be in a completely different department from me. However, Ryan's concerns were elsewhere. If I'm gonna work, I want to earn. I want to make Mommy feel secure. It was all about the money, then. Did he think I wasn't earning enough? So, I pulled out my tablet and showed Ryan our company's job site, detailing the average salary, holidays, paid leave, and benefits. This might not be too bad, Ryan said, looking over the tablet with growing interest. Just as the company was looking to significantly expand its sales team, Ryan was hired without a hitch. I had informed my secretary about Ryan's application from the moment it was submitted. thinking I might ask her to handle any potential issues in the future. I also had another request for the secretary related to our website. Ryan and I decided to get married as soon as he got the job. We didn't have a ceremony. I didn't want my relatives to know, and I wanted to keep it a secret from Ryan that I was the CEO. I was surprised how easily his parents agreed, fearing they would object. His mother was only concerned about how often we could visit their home. Instead of a wedding, we held a small dinner at a restaurant and postponed our honeymoon. I was busy with work, but Ryan also seemed unenthusiastic about a honeymoon. Can't be away from mommy and daddy, can I? There it was again. Mommy and daddy. It just didn't sit right with me. We decided against moving into a new house recommended by a real estate agent. Considering Ryan's freelancer status, it seemed best to avoid unnecessary expenses. After some thought, we chose my apartment as our new home. Ryan agreed. Probably because it was closer to his parents' house. After moving in together, Ryan's attitude began to change. He started looking down on me. Which department are you in? Ryan didn't seem to see me as a business owner. I didn't intend to keep it a secret, but I preferred it not to be widely known. Then, Ryan said something unbelievable. Well, it doesn't matter. You'll be quitting anyway. I was shocked. Quit? Who's quitting? What was he talking about? Was it not Ryan, but me who was supposed to quit? A bad feeling washed over me. Ryan glanced at me and smirked with an unfamiliar, unsettling smile. I felt a chill. Got a problem with that? Ryan looked at me coldly. My heart is racing. I managed to say I had no intention of quitting my job, clutching my chest. Then it hit me. Maybe Ryan wanted children. Are you thinking about when we will have kids? Our company has excellent maternity and paternity leave. Ryan interrupted with something unbelievable. Kids are out of the question. Got my hands full with mommy and daddy. I was confused, tilting my head. Ryan sighed heavily, exasperated. My parents, I told you. They need care. His sudden loud voice made me tense up. I tried to respond. I heard about your father's condition, but you said he's been doing better, which is why you re-entered the workforce. Even if he's better now, they're both old. Ryan snapped, anger flaring. Aren't you worried at all? His yelling filled the room, leaving me bewildered. I tried to calm down and sort through his words. It seemed Ryan intended to push his parents' care onto me, expecting me to quit my job to focus on it. After venting, Ryan smirked. Well, I won't ask you to quit immediately. Dual income brings in more money, after all. It seems my earnings were now the priority. We'll be going back to my parents' house on our days off. Every week? I intended to help as much as possible, but being pushed to provide care every week was too much. What surprised me the most was Ryan's attitude. Before we got married, Ryan was a fun-loving person with many interests, always finding joy in everything and reliably positive. I was at a loss for words by how much he had changed. Especially since a real estate agent had contacted us about a new house close to his parents' home, which was highly sought after, and I had gone ahead and signed the contract, hoping it would bring back the old Ryan. Now, the thought of going to his parents' house filled me with dread. Yet his parents always welcomed me warmly. It's good of you to come. We have some cookies someone gave us, let's have them together. His father said with a smile that reached his eyes. Sorry to have you come over on your day off. His mother said, showing great consideration for me. No, not at all. Having Kelly here makes it feel like my daughter has come home. His mother said, her eyes welling up with tears, and I felt the same warmth in my eyes. I decided to proceed with the new house purchase, thinking it would be all right with his parents around. His mother always prepared my favorite sweets whenever I visited, touching my heart each time. Despite not wanting to be dictated by Ryan, seeing his mother's happy face made me feel at ease. Eventually, Ryan and I started visiting his parents' house separately due to my work schedule, making it impossible to visit every weekend. Sometimes, I had to spend weekends out of town on business trips, so I made up for it by visiting during the weekdays. One weekday, I headed to his parents' house, familiar enough not to ring the doorbell. As I quietly entered and headed to the living room, I heard Ryan's voice, which was odd since he was supposed to be at work. Approaching the living room, I overheard a disturbing conversation and stopped to listen. "She's not very considerate, you know, and terrible at housework," said his mother, a tone I had never heard before. "Couldn't you find someone better?" It sounded nothing like the kind and gentle woman I knew. I felt a tightness in my chest. My hands are going cold. After all the praise and gentle moments shared, to hear such harsh words was shocking. I couldn't bring myself to leave, even though I didn't want to hear any more. Ryan's sly, smooth voice followed. "Sorry, Mommy, but she's pretty sturdy and should be good for physical work." I felt a growing revulsion towards Ryan. "It's all about training. With the right guidance, she'll be useful," he said. "I'm not Ryan and his mother's servant or slave. For now, we need her money, so we'll put up with it. We have high hopes for the future." They continued, laughing carelessly. I felt dizzy, my heart sinking. Despite the shock from Ryan's words, his mother's betrayal hit me harder. All her kindness, the shared moments of laughter, the cooking lessons. Was it all an act? Always smiling, sometimes with tears in her eyes. Was that all just an act? If so, staying in this marriage out of concern for her was a waste. It seemed I was merely seen as caregiving staff. And then, the final blow from his mother. "For now, we'll keep praising her, making her as happy as a fool." I felt faint. Her harsh words unending. "Learn from me how to manipulate her. And guess what? She bought a house nearby," Ryan said, sounding pleased. "How did he find out?" "The real estate agent called the house." I realized the real estate agent had called our home. A mistake on my part for not insisting on mobile contact only. "Isn't that great? Now we can make her work even harder for us," his mother said with a disdainful laugh. I had heard enough and quietly left the house, my grip on my phone so tight my hand was numb. On my way home, I sent Ryan and his mother a message saying I suddenly felt unwell. If I had known it would come to this, I would have never married. The word divorce was floating around in my head. I've always been someone who acts quickly once I've made up my mind. I always choose regretting doing something over not doing it at all. In society's eyes, divorcing so soon after getting married might seem bad. But considering the time spent with someone I dislike, sooner seemed better. I couldn't stand living with Ryan anymore. I immediately prepared the divorce papers. I'll also cancel the new house contract. If not handled well, I could lose my assets through property division. However, I think I'll be okay if I use Ryan's emotional abuse as leverage. I have both an excellent consulting lawyer and a sincere secretary on my side. After making my decision, I decided to act more cautiously. I avoided confronting Ryan and continued to pretend to be submissive. According to reports from my secretary, Ryan had caused several problems at work. This was just the tip of the iceberg. It seemed that divorcing Ryan wouldn't be enough to sever ties completely. I wanted to resolve the workplace issues quickly and then proceed with the divorce as soon as possible. And I decided to keep it a secret that I am the president of the company. If Ryan or his parents found out before the divorce, it could complicate things. Although it was embarrassing, I told my secretary everything. With her help, I steadily prepared for the divorce. Life with Ryan was suffocating, and I felt like I wasn't truly alive. Once I had a plan in place, I ran into Ryan at work. "Perfect timing," he said, approaching me with a full smile. He pulled me into an empty meeting room. "You're hiding something from me, aren't you?" Ryan's sneering laugh sent shivers down my spine. I heard you bought a house. Got a call saying it's ready to move in. I sighed inwardly. So, that was it. I'm moving in with my parents today. If you don't like it, we can divorce and you can leave. I was utterly disgusted. It seemed the time had come to face Ryan directly. He stood defiantly, smirking at me, thinking I would admit defeat and comply with his demands. The days of listening to him for his mother's sake were over. I had thought his parents were good people who cared about me. But after seeing his mother's true nature, I had no intention of confiding in his parents anymore. Then you're fired and can leave the company. I smiled at Ryan and confronted him with the truth. Huh? Ryan let out a perplexed noise, but probably thought it was some weird joke. He quickly regained his composure and laughed it off. Fired? You're not my boss. Have you lost your mind? I sighed softly and looked at Ryan with cold eyes. Seeing my gaze, Ryan tensed up. Anxiety spread across his face. I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. The funny thing is you not knowing the face of your company's president. I showed Ryan the company newsletter featuring an interview with me as the president, with my photo included. Ryan stared at the newsletter as if trying to bore holes through it, then looked back at me. You? No way, you're lying. His face drained of color as he muttered to himself. Got it now? Ryan seemed to collapse on the spot as if all the strength had left his body. No, it's not like that, Kelly. I didn't know anything. He pleaded, trembling and his voice shaking pathetically. Didn't know? No, you just didn't bother to find out. He could have known at any time if he wanted. The company newsletter was available in the break room and cafeteria, and a simple search on his smartphone or PC would bring up my photo. Even if the company website was deleted, my photo could still be found online. Simply put, Ryan wasn't interested. He lacked passion for his work, thus being relegated to menial tasks within the company. To him, the only important things at work were income, time off, and benefits. I was just another unimportant thing to him. But I needed more. We're not done here. We haven't finished talking about the divorce. Ryan visibly panicked. Do you even understand what you're saying? He never thought I would agree to a divorce. Yes, I can't become the ideal lady you want me to be. So, divorce is the only option. I pulled out the divorce papers from my bag. I had kept the divorce papers with me ever since I decided to divorce. Do you realize what you're doing? Ryan looked incredulously between the divorce papers and me. I took out a pen and placed it on the table. Sign it quickly. Ryan was frozen, his face drained of color. Oh, not divorcing? Was it all talk? Snapping back to reality, Ryan slammed the divorce papers on the table and signed them hastily. Now we are strangers to each other, I stated matter-of-factly. Don't come to regret it. Talking back to your husband is a failure as a wife, Ryan said mockingly. Good riddance. A woman who chooses her job over mommy and daddy, glad to be rid of you, he added, sounding like he was making excuses. Oh, my apologies, I replied calmly, not minding his comments. What are you going to do after divorcing? You know how sad my parents will be without you? Do you understand how lonely they'll feel? How ridiculous. They talked behind my back together. I was so angry that I couldn't find the words. I wanted to lash out at Ryan right there, but all I could do was clench my teeth and glare at him. Taking advantage of my silence, Ryan continued to berate me. Poor mommy and daddy, they said they're hungry and there's nothing to eat. So what? There are stores and supermarkets near their house. Go back to your parents. You can still make amends. Ryan arrogantly ordered me around. His parents aren't so immobile that they require care. It's just laziness. Enough is enough. We are strangers now. And I have an important meeting to attend today, I managed to say. Anger brought me to a state of calm clarity. If it's so important, you should take a leave and go yourself. I refuse to sacrifice my important company for the likes of them. I've been patient and obedient enough. Ryan, not expecting me to talk back, stepped back. You're talking back to me? For a wife, that's out of line. I've said it multiple times, but I'm not his wife anymore. Plus, Ryan's values are skewed. He must think a wife is a slave to her husband, silently obeying. And he only imposes things that are convenient for him. What do you mean a wife's place? Who do you think you are? I confronted Ryan without holding back. He gritted his teeth in frustration. They're your parents. Why don't you take care of them yourself before pushing it onto someone else? If they're so important, Ryan can take a leave and visit his mother himself. His job was just organizing the storeroom. With no deadlines or external appointments. He could easily take a day off if he talked to his boss, but he pushes it onto me. His mother's condition can't be that bad. It's just a desire to use me as they please. Ridiculous. Why should I have to take a leave for them? He's so selfish, even about his own parents. Ryan's illogical reasoning seems endless. Listen well. Taking care of mommy and daddy is your job. I'm tired of hearing mommy and daddy. What do you expect from me? I don't expect a sensible answer, but I asked Ryan anyway. Ryan scoffed and replied, You're supposed to take care of everything for mommy and daddy. I couldn't believe how absurd Ryan was being. How shameless can he get? I'm a stranger now. Take a leave and go yourself. I stated plainly. Ryan choked up. Unable to respond. The care of his mother shouldn't be pushed onto me, he should take a leave and handle it himself. To do nothing and complain only to me is outrageous. You would have been satisfied with anyone who would take care of your parents, wouldn't you? Ryan opened and closed his mouth, shaking his head. His face was pale. That's not true. If I had known Kelly was the president, I wouldn't have made her take care of them. Despite saying know your place as a wife earlier, Ryan quickly changed his tune. Deep down, I knew he wanted to exploit me to his advantage. And this was his way of flattering me. However, Ryan gave himself away with his next comment. With enough money, you can hire someone. There it was, the crux of the matter. Ryan always relied on others. So, caregiving is someone else's responsibility, huh? Are you planning to just play around with mommy while doing nothing? That's not it. Ryan said with a forced smile. Suggesting maybe a different future could have been possible if they had manipulated me better. The thought alone was horrifying. What if I hadn't known the true nature of Ryan's parents? I might have happily agreed to his proposals. There could have been a possibility where Ryan focused on caregiving, and I was the breadwinner. Ryan had squandered that chance himself. It might have been a stroke of luck for me. Ryan looked up at me with tearful eyes, pleading. Please, let's start over. We were good together, weren't we? Let's go places again. I remembered the various places Ryan took me on dates before we got married. The places you took me were fun. I acknowledged, and Ryan's face lit up. Perhaps thinking there was a chance. I was foolish to be deceived. It's been hell since we got married. I glanced at my watch, indicating I was in a hurry. Well, I have a meeting to prepare for. I'll contact you about the dismissal. Waving lightly at Ryan, I reached for the door to leave. Before I could open it, Ryan grabbed my left hand. Turning around, I found Ryan glaring at me. We're not done here. Getting fired and divorced, do you think I'll just accept that? Ryan confronted me with tearful eyes. And what's this about being the president? His words trailed off, and eventually, he let go of my hand. The divorce was Ryan's idea in the first place. And it was their fault I couldn't reveal I was the president. Ryan probably never expected me to accept the divorce. He thought threatening me with divorce would make me obey him. And my being the president must have been a shock. Not something an adult should do. Ryan clenched his jaw. Likely regretting the money he had lost, but that was not my concern. It just shows how foolish you were. I said, and Ryan exploded in a reversed voice. Coward! Is it right for a big company's president to fire an employee just because of a divorce? That's tyranny. Whether he had lost his reason or was just being defiant, Ryan puffed out his chest. His thinking was too childish. Unable to accept what I said, he was just throwing a tantrum. Too tired to deal with Ryan, I covered my face with my hands. And Ryan grinned, thinking he had hit the mark. Right on target, huh? Should I make a scene? You'd be the one in trouble. I was exhausted. Though I thought about keeping silent, I pulled out a piece of paper from my bag. Reading the names written on it. Ms. Smith from General Affairs, Ms. West and Ms. Brown from Sales, and Ms. Ortega from Accounting. I then looked at Ryan, who was sweating. There are more names, you know. Ryan stepped back towards the wall, trying to distance himself. The names I just mentioned are of women you've been persistently hitting on. This issue was reported to me by my secretary. Complaints had come into HR, and my secretary informed me. The only person in the company who knew Ryan and I were married was my secretary. When I heard it from her, I couldn't believe it. That my husband was hitting on several female employees. And quite persistently, it seemed. I was so embarrassed by this revelation that I felt like my face was on fire. I was just trying to foster better relations among staff. Ryan made a pathetic excuse. As if such a lame excuse would work. Inviting them to a hotel, what kind of relations were those? Ryan was left mumbling, unable to form words. I had messages sent to my smartphone from the women as evidence. The content was embarrassingly cringeworthy. Ryan had no way out. He needed to face the consequences. Removing a troublemaker from the company is part of a president's job. I told him firmly. Ryan slumped, defeated. To further corner him, I pulled out an envelope from my bag. This is from accounting. It seems you've tampered with some receipts. Ryan reluctantly took the envelope, avoiding my gaze, and fell silent. A mama's boy who leaves everything to others, a womanizer, and on top of that, stingy. Ryan has been a nuisance not just to me, but to many others. It's a fact that he's the worst kind of person, yet I had believed in him. I'm disappointed in myself for not seeing his true colors. Anyway, you're fired. You will be held accountable. I turned on my heel and opened the door to the meeting room. As expected, Ryan didn't try to stop me. He was slumped against the wall, powerless. Well then. Enjoy your time with your parents at your family home. Ryan collapsed on the spot, mumbling something, but I left him behind and exited the room. After a while, my secretary brought me an official report. Following the report, Ryan was immediately dismissed for disciplinary reasons. I issued an apology to the female employees affected. In the name of the president, ensuring their mental well-being is not neglected, monitored through my secretary. Regular reports on Ryan's behavior also come through the secretary from a private investigator. According to the reports, Ryan, now jobless, returned to live with his parents. He tried to start working again as a freelancer, but then something unexpected happened. His father was diagnosed as needing care. And shortly after, his mother developed dementia. Ryan ended up caring for both his father and mother. His mother sometimes wanders at night, leading to sleepless nights for Ryan. Working during the day and caring for his parents afterward, he said he didn't have enough bodies to cope. I need help. Please provide some financial assistance. Ryan contacted me several times. If the divorce had been amicable, I might have helped. However, Ryan and his family treated me like a slave. There's no room for sympathy for such people. Each time, I responded to Ryan with a professional tone. I am unable to assist you. Please refrain from further contact. Should it continue, appropriate actions will be taken. After that, Ryan stopped contacting me. Deciding that I had enough of marriage after divorcing Ryan, I chose to live on my own. I kept the new house I had contracted and rented it out. It's on land likely to appreciate in value, so there shouldn't be any loss. Work is going well, and the company's performance is on the rise. Work has become my purpose in life, and I'm more devoted to it than ever. However, I can't quit bowling, which Ryan introduced me to. I still participate in tournaments and have joined a bowling community circle. Most members are older than me, providing a wealth of life experience to learn from. Recently, a man close to my age joined the group. Unlike Ryan, he's gentle, unassuming, and reserved. Yet, when he gets a strike, his joyous expression is so charming, I find myself secretly thrilled. For now, I keep telling myself that my job is my life. Someday, happiness will come my way, too. With that hope, I continue to dedicate myself to work every day. I had returned to my parents' home in Alaska the day before and was at the airport. Since my brother couldn't pick me up due to a prior engagement, his wife, Mary, was supposed to come get me instead. It was just past 1:30 p.m. The agreed time was supposed to be 1 p.m. It was already over 30 minutes past. As I was wondering what to do, I heard a car horn honking. Turning around, there was Mary. I pulled my suitcase and hurried over to her. "Mary, thanks so much for coming all this way. Was traffic bad? Are you okay?" I assumed she was late because she got caught in traffic and told her so. However, Mary didn't reply. As I was about to give up on the conversation and get into the car, the door wouldn't open. "Huh? Is it locked?" "It's on purpose." "What do you mean? If you weren't planning to let me in the car, why come here?" Was that some kind of hallucination? I doubted my ears. But if that was the case, if you weren't planning to let me in the car, why come here? Just for kicks. Mary laughed with a creepy smile on her face. Then she said, "Why don't you hitchhike home?" "You're kidding, right? Well, I'm off. Take care." With that, she left. Realizing she was quite pleased with herself for merely teasing me, I understood that it was all just a jest. Anger bubbled up within me, and I felt an irritation I had never known before. Well, I might as well hitchhike home, just like Mary said. My name is Hannah. I'm currently 30 years old and work in a home cleaning service. The story of how my husband, John, and I met goes back 10 years, to our college days when we worked at the same part-time job. I was born in Alaska and moved to Chicago for college. To earn money for living on my own, I didn't join any clubs and spent my days going straight from class to work. Back then, I worked at a bar, and many of the staff were around my age, and we really got along well. That's why I was able to enjoy my college life. Among them, I got along particularly well with John. Though we went to different colleges, we were the same age and he was easy to talk to. We often had shifts together, so I spent more time with him than with other members of the staff. "Hey, Hannah. The boss is off today." "Lucky, huh?" "No way. That's awesome. Let's secretly eat the leftover desserts." "Sounds good. It's a deal." We would sneak off like this, just the two of us, or chat about love interests, who liked whom at work, and other lighthearted topics. Back then, I thought of him as just a good guy friend, and I didn't have any romantic feelings for him, but it seems John felt differently. As we were both about to graduate and had secured full-time jobs starting in the spring, we decided to quit our part-time jobs at the same time. After a farewell party thrown by our close friends, and everyone else had left, about 10 minutes later, John asked me to meet him alone at a nearby park. There was no reason to refuse, so I headed to the park right away. "Hey, over here," John called out, waving his hand. "What's up? Are you drunk?" I laughed, seeing John's flushed face looking serious. Usually, John would just say shut up and laugh it off, but not that day. He looked seriously unsettled and didn't change his expression. Feeling the unusual atmosphere, I couldn't help but ask, "What? What is it?" "Well, it's just that." "Come on, spit it out. I don't want to be apart." "Huh? From who? From you. We won't see each other after we quit the job, right? I hate that idea. I was momentarily at a loss for words, not fully grasping the meaning behind John's words. What? Really? Stop with that unbelievable reaction. It hurts, you know. No. Sorry. It's just too unexpected, and my brain hasn't caught up yet. I don't see you just as a friend. I've always liked you romantically. So, if it's okay with you, would you want to go out with me? Seeing John speaking with a seriousness I had never seen before, I realized his feelings for me were genuine. Since I had always seen him as a friend, I told him I needed some time to think, and we parted ways that day. 2 weeks passed with John's confession hanging in the balance, and the time came for the welcome party for new employees. My mind wasn't there, I kept thinking about John. When we were working part-time, we used to see each other 2 or 3 times a week. But since quitting the job, it had been 2 weeks without seeing him. I felt strangely lonely. I couldn't help but think, am I that simple, as I realized I missed John and liked him not just as a friend. And so, our relationship progressed, and after dating for 7 years, we decided to get married when we were 27. It was time to meet each other's parents. As for meeting my parents, I decided against formally announcing it. My parents had divorced when I was young, because of my father's affair. So, it was just my mom and me, as I had no siblings. I had always been the only family for my mom. The reason I chose my current job was because I thought it suited me. My mom was always busy with work, coming home late every day. So, I naturally took on cooking, laundry, and cleaning by myself. But I never found it burdensome. In fact, I enjoyed those moments so much that I decided to pursue this career. I called my mom to tell her about the wedding. Hello, Mom? There's something I want to talk about. Oh, Hannah. How have you been? What is it? Yes, I'm fine. Actually, I want to marry John. So, we're planning to come over and formally greet you. Oh, congratulations. You're finally getting married. I'm really happy for you. If it's with John, I can rest assured you should marry him. Mom. But, I know what John looks like, and there's no need for you all to come formally. It's a long way here, and it's just me, so I'll visit you guys at your place instead. My family home is in Alaska. Traveling from where we live in Chicago to Alaska takes about 6 hours by plane alone. My mom knew about my long-term relationship with John and had met him a few times, so she said it wasn't necessary for us to come for a greeting. However, when I mentioned this to John, he said, "No, it doesn't matter what your mom says, we should go and properly meet her," and so we ended up going to my rural family home to greet my mom together. I told you it was too far for you to bother coming. Distance doesn't matter. I wanted to see your mom in person and talk to her. I promise I'll always make Hannah happy. Hearing this, my mom, with tears in her eyes, happily said, "Please take good care of my precious daughter." With my family's greeting done, the next week we headed to John's home. Having been in a long relationship, we had many chances to visit John's family home before we decided to get married, and I had met his parents several times. John's dad is the president of a major company, and they have a pretty big house. His mom is the wife of a president, a very classy lady. What you'd call wealthy. I remember being shocked by the size of their house the first time I visited. At first, I was scared they might be like the strict and frightening parents you see in dramas. Would they disapprove of me being from a single-parent household or my job? But surprisingly, both of them were really down-to-earth and easy to talk to. They didn't care at all that my mom was a single mother and really took a liking to me. So, I wasn't too nervous about this marriage greeting. Long time no see. Sorry for intruding. Oh, Hannah. It's been a while. You look well. Hannah. Welcome. We've been waiting for this day. Old man here was getting impatient. John's parents were as kind as ever, and I felt relieved. They were genuinely happy about our marriage, and we had a great time that day. We thought our families had accepted us, and we were free from any family troubles, or so I thought, but there was one person I found a bit difficult to deal with, almost like a nemesis. That person was John's brother's wife. She named Mary. Nathan's wife, Mary, and he had gotten married 2 years before us, triggered by the news that they were expecting a child. When they got married, I was still single and just dating John, but we had been together for a long time. When I heard Natalie was going to have a baby, we decided to visit John's family to celebrate. Congrats, Nathan. Nathan. Congratulations. Hannah. Brother. Thanks to both of you. Nathan responded with a smile, and sitting next to him was a woman holding a cute baby. Immediately identifiable as Nathan's wife. I hurriedly introduced myself. Nice to meet you, I'm Hannah. Nice to meet you too. I'm Mary. Nathan has told me a lot about you. We're close in age, so let's get along. Mary smiled warmly, giving off a very calm and kind vibe, which was my first impression of her. The conversation turned to ordering pizza, and we chatted and ate together. Talking with Mary, I found out she was a year younger than me. She worked as a nurse and was currently on maternity leave. As we continued to chat, our husbands said they were going to step out for a smoke, leaving us to continue our girl talk. What was Nathan's proposal like? We got married because I was pregnant, so there was no romantic proposal. It happened casually in the car. Like, we're having a baby, so should we get married? I'm still holding a grudge about it. What? But marriage proposals are every girl's dream. We'll have to lecture Nathan later. Our girl talk naturally transitioned to discussions about careers. Why did you decide to become a nurse, Mary? My mom was a nurse, and ever since I was a child, I wanted to be like her. So, I studied really hard. Wow, that's amazing. And cool. But night shifts must be hard, right? Not at all, it's challenging but fulfilling. By the way, what do you do, Hannah? Me? I work in a home cleaning service. Huh? What's that? I felt Mary's brows furrow for a moment. It's indeed a job not everyone is familiar with. So, maybe she didn't get it? I explained again. I go to clients' houses to do things like cleaning, laundry, and sometimes even cooking meals, taking care of children, or keeping dogs company. It really varies depending on the client. What kind of job is that? Just sounds like being a helper. Mary muttered under her breath. Huh? What did she just say? Did I hear that wrong? What? Oh, nothing. I could never do a job that seems so uninteresting to me. I actually enjoy housework, so it's not a chore for me at all, and it's surprisingly fun. Housework is something anyone can do. I personally would hate being bossed around by strangers. It sounded a bit sarcastic, but oh well. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, after all. I tried not to take Mary's comments too personally. But after that, every time I met Mary, she would criticize my job. Are you still sticking with that pointless job? Pointless? I actually find it quite fulfilling. Oh, sorry. Just slipped out, she would say, in a tone that seemed to belittle my work. This didn't change even after John and I got married. Hannah, I heard you got married to John? Congratulations. It's amazing how John's parents approved of someone in such a low-end job as yours. Low-end job. I couldn't believe my ears at her harsh words. Well, isn't it? Just odd jobs? A helper? Something like that? Did you sweet-talk your father-in-law or something? That's a terrible thing to say. I didn't sweet-talk anyone. They accepted me willingly. Wow. The eldest son's wife of such a wealthy and prestigious family working as just a helper? That's quite the embarrassment. Mary's insults about my job became more intense, taking advantage of my silence. What made it worse was that she would never say such things in front of Natalie or John. She only said them when it was just the two of us. And then she would always add, "Please don't mention any of this to John or Nathan, okay?" If she didn't want them to hear, she shouldn't bother me in the first place. It seemed like Mary enjoyed insulting me and watching my reaction. As per her request, I didn't tell Natalie or John about the insults. So neither of them knew her true nature, with my husband saying, "Mary is really ladylike, isn't she?" I could have told John about her, but nobody likes to hear negative things about their sibling's spouse. It felt wrong to stir things up, so I never brought it up. And since I wasn't being openly harassed at the moment, I thought, oh well. I initially thought we could get along well since we were close in age, but it was clear that wasn't going to happen. But then, one day, something happened that made oh well not an option anymore. That day, I was at the airport. I had gone back to my family home the day before and stayed overnight. Usually, John would pick me up from the airport, but today he was out with his brother Natalie, so he couldn't come to get me. Even though I won't be there, it looks like Nathan's wife is going to pick you up. Mary? She's not resenting it, is she? What? Why would you think that? She doesn't seem to mind at all. You always seem to get along. Nathan said he'd asked her to do it. Just take it easy for today. I was astounded by my husband's obliviousness, but what could I do? Okay, thank you. Then I'll be waiting. I was sure Mary disliked me. So, I never imagined she'd actually come to pick me up. I was skeptical but decided to wait and see. Maybe Mary had changed her feelings? Hoping for that, I waited for the agreed time. However, even after the appointed time, there was no sign of Mary. It was already past 1:30 p.m. More than 30 minutes had gone by since our agreed time. Maybe it was foolish of me to think Mary would come for me after all. Feeling down about it, I was about to leave the meeting spot when I heard a car horn honking. Huh? Turning around, there was Mary. I pulled my suitcase and ran towards her with a smile. Mary, thank you so much for coming all this way. Was the traffic bad? Are you okay? I tried to be friendly, but Mary looked displeased. Sorry, was it too far for you? No matter what I said, Mary kept her silence. Rather, it seemed like she was ignoring me. As I got no response to anything I said, I reluctantly gave up on trying to make conversation and tried to get into the car, but the door wouldn't open. Huh? Is it locked? I looked at Mary remaining silent. Then she finally turned to me and spoke for the first time. It's on purpose, she said. What do you mean? Did you really think I came to pick you up? As if I'd let someone with such a low-end job in this car? What? What does that mean? Exactly as I said. People like you are not welcome in my car. Mary said with a chuckle, which only made me more irritated. Why come here if you had no intention of letting me in the car? Huh? Isn't it obvious? Just for a laugh. I wanted to see that angry face of yours. Mary started laughing with a creepy expression. While I stood there dumbfounded, she spat out, "Why don't you just hitchhike back?" Hitchhike? Are you serious? Yep, I'm off then, she said and walked away. To come all this way just to mock me. My anger towards Mary's actions began to boil over. But I couldn't dwell on it. John was waiting for me at home, after all. Hitchhiking didn't seem realistic. So I decided to take a bus or train home. I had just texted John, saying, I'm still at the airport waiting for Mary, so I'll be home in about an hour, right before this happened. To avoid worrying him, I called, sorry, I'll take the train and bus back, so my return will be delayed by about an hour. What? Why are you taking the bus and train? Mary was supposed to head there, right? Well, she did come to the airport, but then she left me behind. What? Why? What happened? How are you getting back? I don't know. She told me to hitchhike back. What the hell? I'll tell Nathan to ask her to come back immediately. You could tell from the phone call that John was confused and agitated. That makes sense. He had complete trust in Mary, after all. It was when I was contemplating whether to take John's advice and have Mary come back. I spotted someone familiar. Ah, I just saw someone I know. I'll ask if they can give me a ride. I'll figure something out, so wait for me. A friend? Are you sure you'll be okay? Be careful. We'll be home soon too, so don't push yourself, okay? I'm sure it'll be okay. Thank you. With that, John and I ended the call. I decided to chase after the person I spotted to talk to them. Then, I noticed my phone ringing. Is it John? Thinking that, I checked the screen only to see Mary's name displayed. After leaving me stranded at the airport, what could she possibly want now? I was so upset with Mary that I decided to ignore the call. However, she kept calling back relentlessly. Something felt off. Could she have gotten into an accident? If something happened to Mary because I kept ignoring her. Worried by my negative thoughts, I finally decided to answer the call. Hello? Hey! What did you say to Nathan? Mary's voice was so loud that it hurt my ears, forcing me to pull the phone away. It seemed Mary hadn't been in an accident after all. Huh? What are you talking about? After calling me repeatedly, Mary suddenly started yelling, making me even angrier. This time, I couldn't help but respond more forcefully than usual. Nathan scolded me, asking what I did to you. Why do I have to be yelled at? Oh, that's what this is about. I didn't talk to Nathan directly. I just told John I'd be late, and when he asked why, I mentioned you left me behind. We had a deal not to tell John or Nathan, right? It was supposed to be just your problem, but now it's the worst. Mary started screaming again, blaming me. It's your fault. What are you going to do about this? How dare you, with your low-end job? Wait a minute. I never made such a promise, and what's wrong with telling the truth? Her outrage was unjustified. What? If you just wanted to complain, I'm hanging up. Wait. If I don't pick you up, Nathan will scold me. Just wait there. Mary, still furious, said she would come back and then hung up abruptly. Ah, well. There was something important I wanted to say. But it's okay. Thinking this could actually be a chance to turn the tables on Mary, I decided not to call her back and instead waited with the acquaintance I had just met for Mary to arrive. 20 minutes after ending the call with Mary, she showed up at the previously agreed meeting spot. Get in, she said in a brusque manner, gesturing to the car with her chin, urging me to get inside. No thanks. I'll pass. What? What are you talking about? I came all the way here to pick you up. But you were the one who said you wouldn't give me a ride in the first place, right? Why are you being so spiteful? Just get in already. Nathan is going to scold me. No, I've managed to hitchhike. So, I don't need a ride. Hitchhike. Look, these two have offered to take me home, I said, and the people I had spoken to earlier stepped out from behind the car. Mary was shocked when she saw them. Oh, mother-in-law? Father-in-law? Yes. Those people were none other than John's parents. In other words, they were Mary's in-laws. 20 minutes earlier. While I was on the phone with John, I noticed two familiar figures. They were holding hands, carrying lots of souvenirs, and looked very happy together. It turned out they were John's parents. Mother-in-law. Father-in-law. Oh, Hannah. What a surprise. What a coincidence. Why are you at the airport? I was visiting my family home in Alaska. Are you two traveling? Yes. My wife wanted to go on a hot spring trip, so we took a little vacation together, they said, smiling at each other and sharing their travel stories. It was clear they had a wonderful trip. Seeing their cheerful faces made me forget all about my irritation with Mary, and I felt warmed by their happiness. Was John supposed to pick you up at the airport? No, John is out with Nathan. Those two are really close, aren't they? Oh? So how are you planning to get back home? I was actually supposed to be picked up by Mary, but, well. As I hesitated, my mother-in-law expressed concern. What happened? Did something happen? Can you tell me? So, I decided to share what Mary had done to me. How Mary had left me stranded. How she had been insulting me all this time. My in-laws listened intently, nodding seriously. Where is Mary now? She said she was coming back here over the phone. Is that so? Well, this might be a good chance to give her a little surprise. My father-in-law said with a mischievous grin like a boy planning a prank. This was 20 minutes ago. At my father-in-law's suggestion, we decided to wait together for Mary's arrival. Mary was stunned to find my in-laws there, not expecting them to be present. Oh Mary, what a coincidence. Why are you here? Hannah was about to hitchhike because you told her to. We decided to give her a ride. You did tell her to hitchhike back, right? My mother-in-law said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ah, it was. Mary was at a loss for words, mumbling incoherently. Then, she glaring at me. She was caught off guard by my father-in-law's next words. Mary, do you have something to say to Hannah? Please, say it in front of us. Bracing herself, Mary sighed heavily and began. This woman is a low-end worker, you know? How can I say that the eldest son's wife of Nathan's wealthy and dignified family is just a helper? So, I thought I'd say it for you, kind mother and father-in-law. She's a disgrace to this family. Mary spat out her words venomously. A stark contrast to the usually demure and gentle Mary. My in-laws seemed a bit shocked. If you call Hannah's job low-end, what does that make me, a homemaker? That's different. Mother-in-law has class, and being a homemaker doesn't matter. It's absurd to think it's okay for me, but not for Hannah. Hannah has her own dignity too. But, regardless, Hannah doesn't fit in this family. She shouldn't be accepted. It's not for you to decide. It's wrong to judge someone solely by their occupation. From my perspective, both Mary and Hannah are suitable for this family. My father-in-law said, placing a reassuring hand on Mary's shoulder. That's right. We love both of you. So, Mary, please be nice to Hannah. For Nathan and John's sake, and for ours, okay? Tears started to stream down Mary's face. I'm so sorry. I truly am. She apologized through sobs. It's okay. I'm sorry too. I responded, and somehow, we managed to reconcile. Both Mary and I felt anew the warmth of my in-laws. Afterward, Mary decided to drive back in her car, and I went with my in-laws. Though I could have gone with Mary. Let's have a long chat today. Can you tell me about your trip to Alaska? Thank you so much. Because of you, Mother and Father, it seems I can now talk normally with Mary. What are you talking about? We're a family, aren't we? With that, we all went back to the family home where Nathan and John were waiting. Upon arrival, Nathan immediately approached Mary, who was being lectured in a rather upset mood, but it was clear she was quietly accepting the scolding. After seeing Mary's demeanor, Nathan seemed convinced she was genuinely remorseful but warned, you know what will happen if you do something like this again, right? Everyone probably thought of divorce at that moment. Hannah, were you okay? I'm sorry. I had no idea about what was happening between you and Mary. John expressed his regret and concern. It's fine. Besides, I'm okay. Really? You're not just saying that? Yes. Thanks to your parents, I'm safe, and it looks like Mary and I have made up. What? Dad and Mom did? What happened exactly? John looked utterly confused. It made me laugh. Why are you laughing? I was just thinking how happy I am. Thank you for marrying me. What, suddenly, thanks, I guess. John scratched his head in embarrassment. 3 years later. We were both 33. As I was cooking, my husband rushed over to me. Hannah! Please, just sit down. Don't move around too much. Your belly is getting big, you know. Oh, you're being overprotective. I'm fine doing this much. No way. If something happened to you or the baby. I'm just worried, so please sit down. Come on, to the sofa? Guided by my husband, I sat down on the sofa. Yes. Actually, John and I are expecting a baby. I'm in my final month and the baby is due soon. The doctor told us it's a girl. Hannah, if anything comes up, make sure to ask me, okay? I'm somewhat of a parenting veteran. Mary said confidently, hands on her hips. Mary. Thank you. I'll definitely ask for advice. Once the baby is born and grows a bit, let's go on a trip together with Nathan, John, you, me, and the kids. Maybe we should invite mother and father-in-law too? That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. We smiled at each other as we talked about the future. Mary no longer ridiculed my profession. It seems the words of my in-laws resonated with her in her own way. Once like cats and dogs, thanks to my in-laws, we've truly become good friends, now able to discuss anything. Surrounded by kind in-laws, a loving husband, and a caring brother-in-law and his wife, I am truly happy now. I'm carrying Mike's baby. Not tired of just interrupting weddings, a former best friend declares so. Instead of denying it, Mike beamed with a full smile. I'm gonna marry Ellie. Those words caused a stir among the family, except for Hannah and her mother. As everyone else looked on in disbelief, only the two of them appeared happy. All I could do was look on in dismay. That's okay with you, right, Hannah? I'm sorry, Hannah. Please let me have Mike. She pleaded as if they were the protagonists of their own story, their eyes sparkling. In response, I said, sure. And with a smile, I passed the bride's roll to Ellie. Then, leaving the venue with only my mother following, she commented. Hey, that girl. Yeah, no doubt about it. I nodded, agreeing. Glancing back one last time, I saw the two of them smiling happily at each other. To myself, I laughed, thinking, she's a married woman, no less. After a while, oh, it's for Mike. I wonder if he's heard the truth. As an insistent call came from him. My mother and I picked up the phone, laughing together. I am Hannah Arthur, a 26-year-old office worker. I was raised in what you might call a single-parent family. My father passed away due to illness when I was still young, leaving me with little memory of him. My mother, with help from my grandparents and friends, raised me on her own. Sorry, Hannah, I'm gonna be late again today, so you head off to bed without me. Okay, I understand. Just don't overdo it, I'm fine. My mother worked hard every day, and sometimes I felt lonely. The presence of my best friend and relatives became my support system. Especially Ellie and her family, who took care of us like we were their own. Hannah. Mom said you should come over today. Really? That's great because my mom said she'd be late today. My mom and Ellie's mom are best friends, too, and they often invite me over to their house. Because of this, Ellie and I grew up like sisters, talking about everything. That's why I trust her from the bottom of my heart. I bought a new game the other day. You should come over and play sometime. Thanks, Tom. I'll come over on my next day off. Tom Turner, another person I owe a lot to, is a relative. His parents live nearby and have always looked out for me and my mom. Tom, being their only son, treated me like a little sister. Just watch, Hannah. I'll run my heart out in the parents' relay at the sports festival, making up for your dad. At the sports festival, he made a special effort to attend and garnered everyone's attention by sprinting in the parents' relay run. Because of people like them, I was able to grow up without any trouble. We never struggled financially thanks to my mom's hard work, and I can't thank her enough. Now, I'm working hard at my job, trying to give back to my mom and those who have helped us. Someday, I want to go on a trip with everyone. Thinking about this, I've been spending my days. After work one day. Oh, I've got a message from Mike. Could it be your boyfriend? Getting in touch after work, you must be loved. Well, yeah. When I checked my smartphone, there was a message from my boyfriend, Mike. Mike and I have been dating since college. Wait, Hannah? Hannah from the same middle school, right? Could it be, Mike? Originally, Mike and I went to the same school up until middle school. But due to my mom's job, we moved away before high school, putting physical distance between us. Then, we reunited in college. Our conversation picked up from there, and after he confessed, we started dating. So, I guess I'll head home early today. Yeah, thanks for your hard work. Even though we started working at different places, we still make plans to meet up after work and have dinner together sometimes. Today was one of those days, with a message from him saying, I finished up early, so I'll come pick you up at your office. Waiting in front of my office for him to arrive, Hannah? I heard someone call out. Turning around, there was Ellie. Ellie? Long time no see. Really, it's been a while. We've both been so busy, haven't had the chance to meet. True to her words, we've both been busy, and haven't seen each other lately. So, it was a happy surprise to run into Ellie like this. While we were catching up with great joy. Sorry to keep you waiting, Hannah. Mike arrived. He called out to me and then turned his gaze to Ellie. Oh. Hi. Both of them looked surprised. Come to think of it, I moved away after middle school, but they went to the same high school. So, their surprise at this unexpected reunion was understandable. Mike came to pick up Hannah, does that mean? Yeah, we're dating. I announced our relationship, and Ellie looked down for a moment. She seemed puzzled, but then she quickly looked up and smiled at us. Is that so? Congratulations! You guys are perfect for each other. She said with a smile, unchanged from the past. Comforted by her familiar demeanor, I smiled back and said, thanks. It'd be nice to go out for drinks together sometime when we have the chance. Nodding at her suggestion, we promised to meet up again and then went our separate ways. Walking and discussing where to eat dinner together. Ellie really hasn't changed a bit. I found myself thinking of her again at his remark. Indeed, she's as beautiful as ever. Ellie has always been popular because of her glamorous appearance, and just now, there were guys sneakily glancing at her. However, I'd rather you not talk about her like that in front of me. Sorry. That was thoughtless of me. When I honestly shared how I felt, Mike apologized with a laugh. Then, we switched back to more pleasant topics. At that moment, I was oblivious, not understanding why Ellie had looked down. After a while. Oh. What's wrong? Did you and your boyfriend have a fight? It's not like that, but I felt something was off with Mike. We used to go on dates every weekend, but sorry, work's been crazy. I can't make it to our date today, he's been canceling on me lately. Even dinners after work, which we used to have together daily, have now dwindled to about once a week. His puzzling behavior made me wonder if he was cheating. I can't believe Mike would do something like that, but I'm worried. I murmured, sighing deeply. That's when I got a message from Ellie. How about we catch up over tea, just the two of us? The message read, and I thought it was perfect timing to meet. It's a good opportunity to talk to Ellie about it. I didn't want to keep it to myself, and since Ellie had invited me out, I decided to confide in her. Well, it's understandable to feel anxious, but Mike's young, maybe it's natural for work to come first? I guess so, but Ellie seemed to think there was no need to worry. Seeing her like that, I started to think maybe I was overreacting. Why not wait and see a little longer? I nodded at her advice. I've always followed Ellie's advice since we were young. So, I decided to do as she suggested this time, too. We caught up on each other's recent news and promised to meet again, this time with our families. Oh. It's from Mike. On my way back, I got a message from Mike asking, "Can you meet now?" I immediately replied, "I can meet," and headed to him. And then, we ended up having dinner at a restaurant he had unusually reserved. "Hannah, will you marry me?" "I'm so happy." "Yes, I will." During that meal, I was proposed to by Mike. It turns out the reason we hadn't been meeting recently was because he was preparing this surprise. I felt ashamed for suspecting him of cheating while joyously looking at the engagement ring he gave me. I'm glad I talked to Ellie. At that moment, Mike let slip such words. Surprised to hear Ellie's name, I asked what he meant. Actually, I've been getting advice from Ellie. Apparently, Mike had been consulting with Ellie without my knowledge. Maybe that's why Ellie told me to wait and see. So, after I got home, I called her to thank her. And then, he proposed. Congratulations. Doing as I said was the right choice, wasn't it? It really was. Thanks to you, Ellie. As I agreed with Ellie's words, she suddenly fell silent. Just as I was about to ask what was wrong. I hope you'll be happy. What? Ellie said that. While I was confused by her words, she hung up. So I could not ask for clarification. It almost feels like she's saying I won't be happy. I murmured, shaking my head. It must be my imagination. Deciding not to dwell on it any further, I thought. I'll have plenty to keep me busy from now on. Then, I spent my days busily moving around, preparing for the wedding and visiting both families between work. As a result, I didn't have another chance to meet Ellie and never learned the true meaning behind her words. One day, I was called by my mother and decided to visit my childhood home. Welcome back. Tom and Damien are here too. Oh. That's nice. It's been a while since I've seen both of them. In the living room were Tom and his son Damien. It had been a while since I last saw Damien, and I wondered if he remembered me. Hannah. He came running up to me with a smile and hugged me. In fact, due to various circumstances, there was a time when I had taken care of him. Therefore, he was quite fond of me. Damien, I need to have an important talk with Hannah, so please go play in the other room. Amen. Damien reluctantly left, prompted by Tom. And my mother took him to another room. What's this important talk about? I asked, and Tom's expression turned serious. It's hard to say, but actually. He then shared a certain truth with me. I was shocked and at first, couldn't believe what I was hearing. But gradually, anger started to bubble up inside me. So, I have a proposal. I nodded to his suggestion. Flashing through my mind were Mike, who had proposed to me, and Ellie, who had been happy about our marriage. I'll never forgive them. I found myself muttering those words. Time passed, and the day of the wedding arrived. You look so beautiful, Hannah. Thank you, Mom. My mother, as well as Mike's parents, my in-laws, had been looking forward to this day. My mother-in-law, who has known me since I was young, was especially emotional. Thank you for marrying my son, she said, tears of joy in her eyes. You look beautiful, Hannah. Thank you. Mike complimented me, and I smiled in response. The ceremony was supposed to proceed without a hitch. Hold on a moment. The quiet ceremony was interrupted by Ellie, dressed as a bride. Her stomach was slightly enlarged, showing she was pregnant. Ellie? What's going on? Mike, surprised by her sudden appearance. Meanwhile, I looked at her calmly. What's happening, Ellie? I'm sorry, Hannah, but Mike is going to marry me. Saying so, she caressed her stomach. I'm carrying Mike's baby. Not content with just crashing the wedding, my former best friend made such a declaration. To that, Mike didn't deny but instead beamed with a full smile. It really is my child. Then, I am. Those words alone were unbelievable. He then dropped a bombshell. I'm going to marry Ellie. Those words caused everyone but my mother and me to be shaken. Amidst the disbelieving stares, only the two of them looked happy. All I could do was look on in dismay. Is that okay, Hannah? I'm sorry, Hannah. Please let me have Mike. As if they thought they were the protagonists of their own story, they looked at me with sparkling eyes. In response, I said, Sure. With a smile, I passed on the role of bride to Ellie. And then, leaving the venue, only my mother followed me. Hey, that girl. Yeah, no doubt about it. I nodded in agreement with my mom's words. Glancing back one last time, I saw the two of them smiling happily at each other. At that sight, I couldn't help but laugh to myself, thinking, she's a married woman, and yet. Those two are about to descend into hell. Both of you, good job today. Tom said as we were leaving the venue. I shared with him that everything had gone as expected. Then, I'll make my entrance as planned. Please take care of Damien. He said before leaving Damien with us and entering the venue. Let's go to the store, Damien. Yeah. We watched Tom, radiating anger, and proceeded to a nearby store as planned. The store had a kids' space where Damien played happily while my mom and I discussed what would happen next. Shortly after, oh, it's from Mike. I wonder if he's heard the truth. Mike was frantically calling. My mom and I picked up the phone, laughing. What's going on? What the heck is this all about? Don't yell all of a sudden. Explain first, please. As I spoke, Mike stuttered out an explanation. Apparently, he tried to switch the bride to Ellie and continue the wedding. However, Tom appeared, took the microphone from the host, and boldly asked Ellie, We're not divorced yet, and you plan to marry your affair partner? Mike was confused, asking, What do you mean? And Ellie was surprised, Why are you here? Listening to the story, I thought to myself, of course, it would end up like this. You knew Ellie was married? Yes, of course. Ellie was my former best friend, and Tom is my relative. I was the one who brought those two together. It's only natural I would know, right? Yes, Ellie and Tom were married, and Damien is their son. And it was also me who brought the two of them together and encouraged them to date. This was back when I was in college. I can only ask you, Hannah. You don't have to beg, I'd be happy to introduce you to someone. When Ellie reached out to me, she asked me to introduce her to Tom. Ellie had known Tom for a long time, apparently, he was her first love. She hadn't forgotten about him and begged me to make the introduction. So, I contacted Tom, and since he was single, I introduced him to Ellie. Hannah, listen. I'm pregnant with Tom's child. Not long after they started dating, Ellie got pregnant. As a result, Ellie and Tom decided to get married while still students. At the time, I was overjoyed at the marriage of two people I respected and offered my blessings. Congratulations! Are you having a wedding? Sort of. But since it's a shotgun wedding and we're students, we're planning something small, just for family. Oh, but Hannah, since you're Cupid here, you're invited. So, I was invited, but Mike, who I had just started dating at the time, wasn't. Moreover, Ellie, wanting to keep her student pregnancy somewhat private, had sworn me to secrecy, so I never told him. That's why Mike didn't know. But even if you were invited to their home, it doesn't feel like they're married. Well, you wouldn't normally be house hunting. Plus, you seem to head straight for the bedroom. What? Mike was clearly shaken by my words. How did you know that? Tom told me. Actually, what Tom told me that day was about Ellie and Mike's affair. Just as Tom realized the truth, he learned about my marriage to Mike. He came to my family home right away to inform us, asking my mom to call me. That's not true. We'll be seeking alimony. I told him, cutting off his protests and hanging up the phone. Then, I sighed deeply. Well done. Thank you. I'm really exhausted. I replied to my mom, and then Damien, who had been playing in the kids' space, came running up to me. Are you tired, Hannah? Are you okay? I'll pat your back to make you feel better. Saying so, he climbed onto my lap and stretched out his hands desperately to pat my back. My mom and I were both soothed by his actions. I'm sorry, Hannah. My mom murmured as she watched Damien head back to the play area. I looked at my mom's face. It's because I was always so busy with work, I made you feel lonely. Maybe that's why things turned out this way, because of all you had to put up with. That's not true. You raised me well. Indeed, there were many times I had to endure being away from my mom. But that's a different issue. It was my lack of judgment. Yeah, maybe I need to be a bit more discerning. My mom sighed, and I gave a wry smile. Thank you for looking after Damien. Shortly after, we rejoined Tom and went back to our family home. With Damien napping after playing so much, we had a leisurely tea. Then, the doorbell rang. I'll go check it out. After a few minutes, my mom returned. Hannah! Tom! Listen to me! Mike and Ellie barged in, looking flustered. We coldly told the agitated couple, Damien is sleeping, so keep it down. We then left Damien with my mom and moved to another room. The only one I truly love is Hannah. And I love Tom. That was, not serious. Right, it was just meant as a joke. They pleaded with us, showing their ugly true colors. We looked at them coldly. You two were dating back in high school, weren't you? When I told them that, both of their bodies stiffened. Right after hearing the truth from Tom, I contacted another friend who had attended the wedding and had gone to the same high school. I heard you two were quite affectionate in front of everyone at school. Do you even have a sense of shame? I said, making them hang their heads. The two of them, who dated in high school, had a big fight right before graduation over their future colleges. Ellie wanted Mike to choose a lower-ranking university to be with her, to which Mike said, that's absolutely impossible, prioritizing himself. And so, they broke up after the fight. Later on, Mike met me, and Ellie met Tom. Hearing that story made me remember something. Ellie and I had grown up like sisters, sharing everything. Even the boyfriends we had in middle school. When I told her about a boy who asked me out and how we started dating smoothly. A few days later, that boy dumped me and became your boyfriend. That's, well. And it's always been your whims that were prioritized, hasn't it? Being together meant clashing opinions at times. However, it was always me who gave in, so her whims, not my opinions, were what mattered. I never minded, so I didn't think much of it. But apparently, to others, Ellie appeared as a selfish girl. And then, behind my back, you called me a poor kid from a single-parent family. Is that true? I asked, and Ellie looked away. It seemed unable to come up with an excuse. It's not just Ellie. Mike, you also looked down on me, didn't you? That's, well. Mike appeared kind on the surface. However, there were odd things about him. Where to go, what to eat, his opinion always came first. Moreover, I was the one making all the reservations. And yet, whenever there's a problem, it's all my fault. I had managed to deal with it without feeling particularly troubled, so I had let it go. As I spoke matter-of-factly, the two turned pale. I'm truly sorry. I'll change for sure, please forgive me, Mike said, prostrating himself. Ellie followed suit, also getting down on her knees. Seeing the two of them like this, I sighed. I must have been taken for granted. Now I understand. Neither of them is truly remorseful. They're just trying to appeal to us to avoid paying damages, hoping we'll somehow forgive them. I'm breaking off the engagement with Mike. So, go ahead and get married without worry, I told them, causing both to turn pale and tremble. Then, Tom stepped forward. Damien isn't my child, is he? At those words, Ellie's body jerked in shock. Despite her glamorous appearance, Ellie had a reputation for being pure and innocent. She used that to her advantage, hopping from one man to another. And Damien was also one of those men's child, not related to Tom by blood. After learning about your affair, I did a DNA test. The results denied any parental relationship between me and Damien. When I confronted you about it, you ran away, which was quite troublesome. Driven by anger, Tom confronted Ellie, which resulted in her fleeing. Following his confrontation, Ellie fled and has been avoiding Tom ever since, refusing to discuss the matter. And that's what led to the incident at the wedding. As for that pregnancy, I'm not even sure if it's real. The pregnancy is real, Ellie hastily claimed. Well, I guess so. The camera caught you saying, "I'm pregnant, what should we do?" Tom's mention of camera made them go beyond pale to white-faced. In fact, Tom's house is equipped with surveillance cameras. However, they were only regularly checked when Damien was younger. Now, they just record without much review. When I checked them after a long time, I found the affair recorded. Ellie had discussed her pregnancy and crashing the wedding on camera. Thus, we were able to plan our strategy in advance. The two trembled violently at Tom's words. Then, Tom handed Ellie the divorce papers. "I'm divorcing you. I'll take custody of Damien, and of course, I'll be demanding alimony. I'll also be claiming compensation for breaking off the engagement," I announced following Tom. Despite their pleas for us to reconsider, both of us refused. Go ahead and get married without any worries. You'll never find happiness anyway. But enough now. Just then, my mom burst into the room with force. "I won't forgive anyone who hurts my precious daughter. Get out of here now." Overwhelmed by my mom's intensity, the two scurried away. Watching them leave, we burst into laughter. What a pathetic sight. Really. After a good laugh, I turned back to Tom. "What will you do now, Tom?" "I guess I'll have to move out. I don't want to stay in that place, so I'm planning to live in a monthly rental for a while," Tom said with a troubled smile. Though everything went according to plan, there wasn't enough time. So they couldn't arrange a new place to live. His parents had passed away a few years ago, and since the family home was sold, someone else lives there now. "Oh, then you should come stay here," my mom suggested out of the blue. Surprised, we all turned to look at her. Damien is fond of both me and Hannah. So, why not live here together? "Hannah, you're about to start remote work, aren't you?" At my mom's words, I nodded. Indeed, my company was introducing remote work, and I was scheduled to work from home after my holiday. "You wouldn't want to stay in a house with that man, right?" At that, I nodded again. Indeed, it would be more efficient for both me and Tom to live in this house. We looked at each other, and then bowed our heads to my mom, thanking her for taking us in. "Dad? What's happening?" Damien, rubbing his sleepy eyes, came waking up. He tilted his head at us, bowing to my mom. "Damien, from today, we're going to live in this house." "With Hannah and Grandma?" "Yes, together." At Tom's words, Damien beamed with a smile. By the way, Damien calls my mom Grandma. He's that fond of her. "Please take care of us, Damien." "Yeah." Despite the hardships, Damien's smile made it all seem worthwhile. After that, we moved out of our respective homes and into my family home. I was held back by Mike and Tom by Ellie, but we both ignored them. "Hannah, we're best friends, right? I've always been there for you," Ellie called me, crying and pleading. The old me might have felt sorry for her. But not anymore. "I don't consider you my best friend anymore. And it wasn't you who took care of me, it was your mother." With that, I hung up. Cuteness leads to 100-fold hatred, exactly right. The more I had trusted her before, the more insignificant she became the moment she betrayed me. Now, it's time for her to atone. Thinking so, I blocked Ellie's contact. Later, I received apologies from Ellie's mother and my in-laws. The two of them were thoroughly reprimanded by their parents. I've made sure to spread the word about this incident. My mom runs a business. She had shared the story with her clients. As a result, it seems both were fired from their jobs. They're probably struggling quite a bit after being sued for damages by us. Yeah, Ellie did work, but she was never good at her job. Ellie had tried to claim custody, but after accumulating debt and being disowned by her parents, I prefer Dad over Mom. Because Mom never pays attention to me, Damien's words led to Tom being granted custody. In reality, Ellie had been neglecting Damien. Hannah, when you were a child, we took care of you so much. Now it's your turn to take care of me, she would say, sometimes leaving Damien with me. During the weekdays, Ellie's mother took care of him, and on weekends, it was me and my mom. Tom was busy with work, believing Ellie's words, "I'll take good care of Damien, so you focus on your job," leading him to work hard every day from early morning till late at night. Recently, realizing this was not the way to live, he started spending more time with Damien. That decision seemed to have made all the difference. By the way, what will happen to that child? I was concerned about the child in Ellie's womb. I couldn't see her being capable of raising a child. And Mike was just as self-centered. That child will be taken care of by Ellie's mother, who will entrust the child to a relative. Unlike us, Ellie's mother truly was a close friend of my mom. I trust her, so I'm sure the child will be happy. Relieved, I sighed. Then, Tom took my hand. Hannah. If you're okay with it, would you go out with me? What? His sudden confession made me stare at him in surprise. Tom seemed a bit embarrassed. My first love was always you, Hannah. It turns out Tom had always had feelings for me. But he suppressed them after I introduced him to Ellie, and they started dating. But I won't hold back anymore. Please, go out with me. Soon after, we started dating. My mom seemed to sense it and watched us with a fond smile. Hey, Damien. What would you do if I said I wanted to be your mom? Hannah being my mom? I'd be really happy. Damien's words encouraged us, and now we are considering marriage. I'll definitely make you happy, Hannah. I'm looking forward to it, I replied with a smile to Tom's words. Since then, we've gotten married and become one family. Hey, Mama Hannah. What's up, Damien? One day, Damien looked up at me a bit shyly. I found his gesture adorable and asked while patting his head. You know, I want a little brother or sister. His words made me blush this time. When I told Tom, he blushed just the same. Later, we decided to fulfill Damien's wish. Sometime after. There's a baby in here, right? Yes, that's right. Here's where your little brother or sister is, I told Damien, now pregnant with Tom's child. Damien, imitating me, gently stroked my belly. Truly, Tom's child. My child is in there. And Damien, he is our child too. I know. From now on, it'll be me, Hannah, Mom, and 2 kids, a happy family of 5. Tom said, and I nodded in agreement. I do my best for my family and me from now on. I pledged in my heart. I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Give me a $5,000 baby shower gift. We're besties, right? Kelly, my best friend who I hadn't heard from in 3 years, suddenly got in touch. I was absolutely flabbergasted by her words. What? You got married? Yeah, I did. As I asked in surprise, Kelly replied cheerfully. I was about to congratulate her when she said, actually, the reason you guys never had kids must be because Michelle lacks sex appeal, freezing. Simon, my ex-husband, and they had a child together. Michelle? You're coming, right? Kelly's triumphant voice reached me as I fell silent on the phone. There were so many things I wanted to say, like when did this happen, or you never even bothered to contact me before, but I knew responding would play right into Kelly's hands. So, I took a deep breath and calmly responded. Sure. I'll come with my husband, the lawyer. And so, John and I headed to her house. Little did anyone imagine that Kelly reaching out would lead to such upheaval in her and Simon's lives. My name is Michelle. I was born and raised in a rural area of Kansas. I spent my school years there before moving to New York for work. Living alone in an unfamiliar place from a young age, I remember feeling very lonely without any friends. After work, it became my routine to call friends and family back home. Even years later, I never really got used to the environment and had no acquaintances outside of work. Then, a turning point came when I visited a coworker's house and met a man who was a friend of her husband. His name was Simon. Born and raised in New York, he worked as a doctor at a university hospital. Simon, being the same age as me, seemed very sophisticated and attractive to someone from the countryside like me. Simon took a liking to me as well, and soon after we met, we started dating and got married in the year we both turned 30. The first person I reported my engagement to was Kelly, my best friend since elementary school. We had gone to the same schools through middle and high school, essentially best friends. Kelly was the only child of a local politician, a pampered princess. She inherited her father's leadership qualities and decisiveness, but also had a tendency to always think she was the best, for better or worse. I, on the other hand, was indecisive and lacked confidence. That's why I always admired Kelly, who was confident and always took the lead. Even after moving and not seeing each other as much, my feelings of her being a precious friend didn't change after moving to New York. That's why she was the first person I called to announce my news. Kelly? Guess what? I'm getting married. What? No way. To that guy, Simon, was it? I had, of course, talked to Kelly about Simon. Though they had never met, she knew his name and occupation. Yeah, that's right. Marrying a doctor, huh? You hit the jackpot. That's amazing. Kelly exclaimed excitedly upon hearing my news, which made me laugh unintentionally. I laughed because I misunderstood her excitement as being happy for my marriage. It's not like that. And besides, doctors don't make that much money yet, and he doesn't have much savings, so it's not really marrying into money. But that's okay. I'm not marrying for money. That's why I casually denied Kelly's words. However, my response seemed to have struck a nerve with Kelly. She went silent for a moment, then said coldly, "What? Is that some kind of brag? Pretending to be modest? Oh, it's pure love, money doesn't matter? What? Besides, you've been saying you wanted to come back here, but you never did. And now you're marrying someone from there, it's like you've looked down on us country folks all along." Her tone was not warm or joking. Rather, it felt like she was looking down on me, which made me rush to respond. "That's not it at all. I really did want to come back, and I never thought I'd end up marrying someone here. But that's what happened. You got carried away thinking you're someone now that you're with a city guy. You'd have made a better impression if you were happy about marrying into money. That's not." Despite just announcing my marriage, Kelly seemed upset, and I didn't know what to do. "Enjoy your fancy wedding then. I'll be looking forward to the invitation." With those words, Kelly hung up, leaving me speechless. Did I say something so wrong? I immediately tried calling back, but she didn't answer. Even my texts went unanswered. After getting in touch with Kelly, I intended to share my marriage news with other friends, but I completely lost the mood for it. However, I couldn't bring myself to not invite Kelly to the wedding. Our parents have been acquaintances for many years. And besides, it wouldn't make sense to invite all other childhood friends but leave out Kelly, my best friend. Despite reaching out to her multiple times after that phone call, I never got a reply. The wedding invitation was returned without any message, only a checkmark indicating her attendance, which was a simple gesture. Appalled by Kelly's immaturity, I planned to apologize at the wedding for my poor communication and decided it would be best to naturally distance myself from her moving forward. Then came the wedding day. Kelly showed up in an extravagant outfit, acting as if our previous conversation never happened, and cheerily approached me with her friends. Look at you. Simon is quite the looker. I was imagining some unsociable geek since you said he was a doctor. She blurted out, leaving me dumbfounded. Simon, who was by my side, laughed upon hearing her. Well, you must be Kelly, right? Thanks. Take good care of Michelle for me, and feel free to visit us in New York anytime. He said, surprising me yet again. Despite being aware of the situation between Kelly and me, including my plans to keep a distance, Simon inviting her to stay in touch made it impossible to maintain that distance. Really? Thank you. I've been looking forward to meeting Simon, and I'm counting on you too, Kelly said, making herself overly familiar with a light touch. Kelly's behavior made me uncomfortable. But I couldn't say anything that might ruin the wedding day and managed to force a smile through the situation. Kelly's solo performance continued. She went from one of Simon's doctor colleagues to another, making her presence known. From the head table, I watched nervously as her actions could easily be misconstrued as being on the hunt for men, which was particularly embarrassing considering some guests were Simon's seniors and bosses. Having my friend act inappropriately towards my husband's colleagues was the last thing I wanted on our wedding day. I was drained by the end of it. But the thought of not seeing Kelly for a while brought me a bit of peace. However, my peace was short-lived. Michelle! I'm here for a visit. Kelly started coming to our house once a month, insisting on staying for at least 2 nights each time. Simon, you're so funny. It's fun for me too when Kelly visits. They would start their drinking sessions, leaving me to clean up afterwards since I don't handle alcohol well. Naturally, preparing snacks and drinks also became my responsibility since Kelly wouldn't bring anything. After a year of this routine, I expressed my feelings to Simon. I'm thinking about asking Kelly not to come over anymore. It's a burden on you to always be entertaining, and honestly, preparing the guest room and shopping is hard on me. To which Simon responded, It's rare for a friend to come visit from her hometown just to see you. Don't say things like that. I'm okay with it, so let's keep welcoming her. It seemed Simon had forgotten about my desire to distance ourselves from Kelly, making me feel like the villain. Despite several discussions about my concerns regarding Kelly with Simon, he never took my concerns seriously. I started feeling sick a few days before Kelly's monthly visits, and I began to dislike both her presence and myself for feeling this way. Our marriage, though generally happy, was strained by arguments over Kelly. One day, when Simon was out, Kelly was at our place. We ended up drinking together in the evening. Non-alcoholic again? You're not pregnant, right? Just drink. Yeah, but I'm not good with alcohol. So, no pregnancy yet? Kelly asked abruptly. Her nonchalant manner of broaching such a sensitive topic forced me to laugh it off. Yeah. We're hoping. Maybe you're not attractive enough as a woman? You better hurry up before it's too late for a safe pregnancy, she said, laughing as if it was a joke. Annoyed by her rudeness and the implication that attractiveness had anything to do with it, I snapped back. What about you? You're the same age and not even married, yet you're quick to judge others? Huh? What's that tone? You think you're better than me because you left the countryside? I didn't say that. Without anyone to stop us, our argument escalated. Kelly, as if ready to pounce, slammed the table. Don't get too cocky just because your husband is a doctor. If you had married someone with a higher income, like a congressman or a lawyer, like my dad, maybe then. But you used to mock Simon for his low income. That's not. It was then Simon returned home. At the worst possible time. He looked at me suspiciously, frowning. Is what Kelly just said true? You've been mocking me for my low income? Yes, that's right. She even said you couldn't save money. Kelly chimed in, and Simon turned his glare towards me, believing her words. It's a misunderstanding. Yes, when Kelly accused me of being after money, I did say your income wasn't that high yet, but it wasn't a complaint. I never meant it in a bad way. Even so, that would hurt Simon's pride, wouldn't it? Can't you understand that? Kelly interjected, obviously trying to side with Simon and pit him against me. I ignored Kelly. Clearing up the misunderstanding with Simon and repairing our relationship was more important to me. Simon was silent for a moment, then sighed. But honestly, we can't say our relationship has been going well. Like Kelly said, my pride is hurt. We need to talk about our relationship. That's not. Next to a smirking Kelly, I sincerely apologized to Simon. I told him I didn't fall for him because he was a doctor and that my feelings for him were genuine. However, Simon only said he was disillusioned with me. Eventually, we ended up divorcing. I tried to prevent it, but Simon's feelings wouldn't change. So, for his new beginning, I reluctantly accepted the divorce. 3 years had passed since our divorce was finalized. I had no contact with Simon or Kelly during that time. Some friends asked why I wasn't in touch with Kelly either, but after witnessing the crisis in my marriage and seeing Kelly side with Simon, I couldn't bring myself to contact her. Then one day, a call came from Kelly's number, which I had saved in my phone. Hesitantly, I answered. How have you been? I was taken aback by Kelly's unchanged demeanor after 3 years. I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Give me a $5,000 baby shower gift. We're besties, right? She said, shocking me. What? You got married? Yeah, I did. Kelly replied cheerfully. As I was about to congratulate her, she said, actually, the reason you guys never had kids must be because Michelle lacks sex appeal, freezing me in my tracks. Huh? I, and even Simon, are happy to see Michelle after so long. That's when I realized. Kelly had somehow ended up marrying Simon and they had a child together. Michelle? You're coming, right? Kelly's triumphant voice reached me as I fell silent on the phone. There were so many things I wanted to say, like when did this happen, or you never even bothered to contact me before, but I knew responding would play right into Kelly's hands. So, I took a deep breath and calmly responded. Sure. I'll come with my husband, the lawyer. What? So you married Simon, meaning you're living here now? Oh. Yeah, we're living in New York. Great. Then give me your address. I'll come visit. I continued, taking Kelly by surprise with my response. After getting her address and avoiding further questions, I quietly ended the call. A month later, on the weekend, I decided to visit the address Kelly gave me. I hadn't asked when the baby was born, but if she contacted me right after the birth, the baby must still be a newborn. Considering it might be a difficult time, I waited about a month before visiting. On the way there, I spoke to my husband, John, who was driving. Sorry for the trouble, especially on your day off. John shook his head with a smile. No worries at all. Actually, I had remarried about a year ago. We met through a popular dating app. John might not be considered conventionally handsome, but he's a very kind person. We hit it off right away after meeting. After we started dating, I learned about John's job. I was surprised. Turns out, his job was as a lawyer. John had left the profession and income fields blank because he wanted to meet someone who saw him for who he was, not for his job. I did wonder why those fields were blank, but sometimes people leave them empty. So I didn't think much of it. Do you want me to put the address in the GPS? Do you know where it is? When we stopped at a red light, John, who was driving, asked. I took out the note to check the address and caught my breath. We don't need the GPS. I'll guide you. Oh. All right then. The car started moving slowly again. I looked at the address once more. Without a doubt, it was the address of the apartment where Simon and I used to live. No wonder I remembered it after hearing it just once. At that moment, I hadn't realized because my mind was full, but thinking about going back to that house made me a bit nervous. When we arrived at Kelly's house, John and I entered together. Nice to meet you. I'm Kelly, Michelle's best friend. Kelly greeted John with a smile at the entrance. Wait, you got remarried? I'm honestly shocked. Why didn't you tell me? I was holding back thinking it'd be wrong for me to be the only one happy. Kelly laughed. Holding back? Did she feel a bit guilty for marrying Simon and having a bit of happiness? If that was the case, I wish she had just told me. I asked with a wry smile. When did you get married, Kelly? I had no idea you two were a thing. About 1.5 years ago? We ran into each other by chance. Kelly said without making eye contact. Entering my old home after a long time felt strange. It seemed Simon wasn't home. Which I was honestly relieved about since I didn't want to meet him. Kelly was feeding the baby milk and asking John what he liked about me. I thought it was none of her business, but since John answered politely, I didn't join their conversation and instead glanced at a shelf. There were many photos of Kelly and Simon. Among them were photos I had taken when Kelly used to visit every month. There were also photos of them going out together and of a pregnant Kelly. Looking at them, I wondered how, if they had only reconnected 1.5 years ago, there were no gaps in the photos. There were photos that looked like they were taken in spring, in summer with short sleeves, in fall, and in winter looking cold. And the hair color changes. Considering the photos I took over 3 years ago, there seemed to be no 1.5 year gap. Could it be that they were dating even while I was married to Simon? Such doubts arose. And as if confirming those doubts, memories of their closeness and atmosphere came flooding back. Once I started thinking about it, I couldn't see it any other way. I slowly turned around. And I recognized the look Kelly gave John, filled with anger. Like an animal that had found its prey. Worried she might try to take John from me too, I confronted Kelly with a stern voice. Kelly, don't tell me you stole Simon from me? At my words, Kelly visibly shifted her gaze. Then, unexpectedly, she burst into laughter. You've been looking at those photos and came up with that story? Don't laugh, answer me. To think you didn't notice until now, you're really foolish. But, thanks to that, Michelle, you got to meet John, right? It turned out well, didn't it? Kelly admitted it casually. I was furious, but seeing the small baby in Kelly's arms, I couldn't bring myself to scold her and bit my lip instead. Besides, in the end, you preferred a lawyer over a doctor, right? That's why you divorced Simon so easily. Her words made me incredibly frustrated. I never chose Simon or John based on their professions. Meeting John was indeed a happy turn, but that's a different story. After divorcing Simon, I went through a really tough time, couldn't eat, and blamed myself for what went wrong. And to think, it was because Kelly was involved with him all along, they were mocking me together. I held back tears as Kelly laughed triumphantly. John, this girl, she loves chasing after rich men. You're young, you should find someone else. No, that's not true. I looked at John pleadingly. Then John murmured with a thoughtful expression. I see. I think I understand the situation now. I was shocked by his words. Thinking John was disgusted with me. In contrast, Kelly's lips curled up in a smirk. Reminiscent of the day she sided with Simon against me. But John stated clearly. So, Kelly, you've been involved with Michelle's ex-husband since they were still married? That's right. It's really dumb she didn't notice. Kelly laughed, and I snapped back. No way! Don't be stupid. This was why Kelly had contacted me. 3 years had passed. They thought what they had done to me had essentially been erased. John laughed. Kelly, you seem well informed. Of course I am. It's Michelle who's the fool here. She could file a civil lawsuit for the psychological damage. Please reflect on how you've hurt my wife. Michelle, let's go. Kelly turned pale at John's words. Beside a flustered Kelly, John gave me a reassuring smile. Relieved that John hadn't fallen for Kelly's manipulation and remained on my side until the end, I wiped away my tears. The kind and gentle John had been desperately thinking of how to heal my wounds and went through with the process of lawsuit. At the same time, my phone was incessantly ringing. Calls from Kelly and an unknown number. When I answered once, hearing Simon's voice, I immediately hung up. Thanks to that, we also got Simon's number, making the paperwork smooth. On another day, we visited their house again. These are the documents related to the process. We've brought them for your review. It was a Sunday, so Simon was home too. As soon as we arrived, both of them apologized.
Michelle, I'm really sorry. Please withdraw the lawsuit.
Kelly suddenly became docile, apologizing.
I kept quiet for your sake. I thought it's something we could take to our graves. Yeah, that's right. I only told you because you seemed happy.
Simon, too, as if they had done nothing wrong, continued with their uninteresting excuses.
So, you admit you're at fault?
Of course. Then, pay the alimony. But they fell silent at those words. The apology was meaningless without action. John began to explain the alimony.
Anyway, we'll be claiming $50,000 from Simon to Michelle, and $50,000 from Kelly to Michelle, making it a total of $100,000. $100,000? There's no way we can pay that.
The amount John mentioned sent them into a frenzy. Without changing his expression, John calmly explained the reasoning behind the amount. Still, they kept complaining, that's too high. We have a child. If you had any decency, you wouldn't demand such an amount from a family that has to raise a child. If they had any decency, they wouldn't have interfered with a friend's marriage or pursued a friend's husband. Despite their self-righteous ranting, John, for the first time, raised his voice to silence them.
That's how serious your actions were. All this talk of taking it to the grave, how foolish. You were just overcome by lust. Don't make excuses.
With that, the two were effectively silenced. Next to him, I felt profoundly grateful to John. All right. Simon murmured quietly.
Wait, Simon. Are you serious? Where are we supposed to get that kind of money?
I'll figure out my part. You can borrow from your parents.
What? There's no way I can do that.
As they started to argue among themselves, it was clear that Simon had the income as a doctor. Kelly, on the other hand, had no income. Though she might have worked while living in her hometown, the cost of her frequent flights to visit us must have been substantial, and it was unclear when she had quit her job or if she was the type to save money. Especially since her father is a congressman. Even if they have the money, he's not the type to pay off his daughter's infidelity alimony. We'll be leaving now.
Please contact us when you're ready.
John prompted, and I also left the house. After closing the door, Simon's angry shouts of "Why did you tell Michelle?" could be heard. There was no sign of remorse. Hearing that, John and I laughed as we left. We walked to a nearby coin parking lot to get into our car when we heard.
Wait, please!
Simon's voice stopped us.
Get in the car first.
I nodded and got into the car. The window was slightly open, allowing me to hear their conversation. I wanted to close it since I didn't want to hear anything, but sitting in the passenger seat, I couldn't start the engine, so I just sat quietly.
Listen, you know my situation, right? Please, do something.
Simon pleaded, making me look up. That's a different issue. Suggesting they knew each other, which I found odd. But it felt like I shouldn't be listening to such a private conversation. However, I couldn't help overhearing it.
How much do I have left? Tell me.
In a place like this. What if someone hears us?
Just tell me. My life is on the line here.
Simon pressed John urgently. John whispered something back.
So, $40,000 to Amy and $22,000 left in installments to Mina. And now $60,000 to Michelle on top of that. There's no way I can pay.
I was stunned by Simon's words.
And to think you were Michelle's ex-husband. It's only a matter of time before Kelly finds out and demands alimony. Please, don't tell Kelly.
Of course, I have a duty of confidentiality. But can you keep hiding it forever? Listening to John, Simon was distressed. Witnessing this, I couldn't help but laugh. It seemed Simon had been committing adultery repeatedly. Though they say fools and their money are soon parted, the way Simon has been throwing around his money has to be the height of folly. What a mess. You should learn from them.
I know.
Then, take care not to let Kelly find out. If you don't value her, you'll lose both your family and your money. John left those words behind and headed towards the car. Wait. Simon called, but John didn't stop. Simon, who made eye contact with me as I got into the car, froze as if petrified. Probably thinking his pride couldn't stand showing me such a pathetic sight. But it was already pitiful enough. The alimony to Michelle cannot be reduced by even a penny. Please take care. With those words, Simon finally slumped against a concrete wall, seemingly contemplating his next move. Hopefully, he'll use the brain he wasted on hiding his infidelity to somehow alleviate the damage he's caused to the victims. Sorry to keep you waiting. John got back into the car with a smile. I just greeted him with a smile in return. Thanks to John, I was able to receive the alimony from Simon and Kelly. Kelly had asked Simon to cover her portion of the alimony, but Simon had no means to do so. Eventually, she had to turn to her parents. Kelly's parents, of course, knew Simon was my ex-husband, but probably never imagined he was the cause of our divorce. They were furious when they found out the whole truth, especially since Kelly had lied about reuniting with Simon only a year and a half ago. Kelly's mom cried, saying it was her fault for spoiling her too much. Her dad said he wouldn't let her cross their doorstep again. It's clear that even with decent parents, a child might not turn out well. And they also found out about Simon's ongoing alimony hell. Though it's odd to condemn someone else's affair when you've had one yourself, I hope Kelly can understand a bit of how I felt. Simon chose to rebuild his marriage with Kelly, despite his infidelity and their child. With Kelly's pride and Simon's unchanging habits. I just hope their child grows up well, thinking of it as someone else's concern. After settling down, John and I went on a trip to a southern island with a view of the sea. A place that seemed to heal all the hardships and wounds of the past. I'm of an age where having children might not be possible. And while I regret missing my chance, meeting John has been a great happiness. I thanked John again. If I hadn't met you, I'm sure I'd still be alone, at the bottom of a pit of despair. Meeting John has brought me true happiness. Thank you for coming into my life. I wanted to be with you, Michelle, because you saw me for who I am, not what I am. Thank you for meeting me. Let's continue to look forward to our future together. John said this to me. I thought about how I want to cherish our current happiness and see as many different scenes with him as possible in the future.
Mom, I made sure everything was locked up tight. Of course, I didn't forget Dad's cherished shed either.
That's great. Shall we go on our trip then? We were supposed to go on a birthday trip for our daughter, the three of us, including my husband. However, he suddenly had to go on a business trip because of an urgent work matter he couldn't get out of, and just like that, he said we wouldn't be able to go on the trip. After sending off my husband, my daughter and I headed to the airport and flew to our destination. When we returned from the trip, my daughter wanted to give souvenirs to Grandma and Grandpa, so we went to my in-laws' house. The atmosphere there was incredibly tense, and my father-in-law was erupting like an active volcano, absolutely furious. It seems that a terrible accident had occurred while we were away on our trip, and the discoverers were none other than my in-laws. I'm a married woman in my mid-30s. I was assigned to the administrative department of the sales division at the company where I started working after graduating from college. Though I didn't go out on sales calls directly, there were times I had to go outside to assist with various tasks. One time, when I had to deliver some forgotten documents to a client, the person who helped me out was my future husband. Later, we ended up sharing a table at a crowded restaurant during lunchtime, which led us to start dating, and eventually, we got married. I was really enjoying my job at the time, so I proposed to keep working until I got pregnant, and my husband agreed, saying that the idea of a stay-at-home wife was outdated. After finding out I was pregnant, I kept my promise and quit my job to focus on our family and gave birth to our daughter. My romantic history hasn't always been smooth sailing. If anything, I've had experiences that made me timid about love or even left me with traumas. It was mostly from my high school days. I wasn't particularly popular, but I did date to some extent appropriate for my age. Mostly, I ended up in relationships where the other person confessed their feelings to me, but inevitably, they would find someone else they liked more and leave me. When asked why, they would simply say they found someone they liked more than me, which gradually made me more and more wary of love. During my university years, because of these traumas, I didn't participate in any mixers and mostly hung out with girlfriends. If a guy joined the group, I would feel uncomfortable and leave. As a working adult, I decided to keep it strictly professional with men, having coffee or lunch with them, but never considering them as romantic interests. Yet, my husband became a romantic interest, and our relationship led to marriage, which I consider nothing short of a miracle. He was the only one who confessed his feelings for me and didn't leave. My husband was both a good talker and a good listener, always managing to make me laugh. Life with him was lively, every day felt fresh and exciting, and I was truly happy. Then, one day, someone I knew moved nearby. That person was a friend I was very close to when I was in high school. Looking back, it might have been over something trivial, but at the time, it felt significant enough for us to have a falling out. What exactly led us to drift apart, I can't quite remember now. Since our falling out, I hadn't contacted her even once, only hearing about her through mutual friends at reunions. That's how I learned she had gotten married. When we accidentally met again, I was so stiff, not knowing the right way to act. But she approached me cheerfully, as if she had no memory of our quarrel. So, I blurted out, "Emmy?" Because that's what I used to call her. Emmy cheerfully said, "I got divorced." It seems she decided to start fresh and moved to an unfamiliar place. She brightly shared that she's now making a living through part-time jobs. Can you believe running into someone I know here? I'll be honest with you, I was really feeling scared and vulnerable. I'm not used to being alone. I remembered how Emmy always had people around her, always lively. So, I impulsively said, "We're neighbors now, come over anytime." Little did I know, this would lead to something else. Emmy quickly came over, saying she bought some trendy pastries to share with my family. At first, she came over when my husband wasn't home, during weekdays, but gradually, she started saying it was lonely to eat alone and began staying for dinner. Eventually, she got on well with my husband, and before I knew it, she was frequently visiting when my husband was home. Our house was always filled with conversation and laughter. Having Emmy around, and seeing how my husband was friendly towards my friend, I felt truly grateful. However, I started to notice that the closeness between my husband and Emmy was becoming unnatural. Even from a woman's perspective, Emmy is beautiful, and she has a way of talking to anyone without any barriers. In high school, she was adored by both upper and lower classmen, and even teachers liked her. She was the kind of person who could befriend anyone. I don't think there is any ulterior motive, yet my husband blushed and acted all smitten around Emmy, sometimes touching her more than necessary. I can somewhat understand a man being charmed by Emmy's looks, but my husband has a wife and child right in front of him. What's with that behavior? My suspicion only grew. Emmy began visiting closer to the evening. Half the week, she was having dinner with my family as if it was a given. But I started making excuses, ensuring she left before my husband came home. Sometimes, I'd forcefully suggest, "How about we have lunch together," to get her out of the house. Initially, Emmy was okay with it, but gradually, she started asking, "Do you have a reason for not wanting me in your house?" And avoiding my husband became increasingly difficult. Despite not wanting my husband and her to get close, I found myself making up reasons to refuse her visits. Things changed after she started coming over. My husband has been into DIY since before we were married and always said he wanted his own shed in the backyard once we tied the knot. A shed wasn't feasible, so we settled for a large storage container that doubles as a workshop. He would spend almost all his days off locked away in there, immersed in his hobby. He brought in a big sofa to lounge on, but he never shooed me or our daughter away. In fact, he'd get passionate about his projects or work on them together with her. Our daughter enjoyed watching things come together so much that there were times she wouldn't leave his side. But recently, he's been chasing her away with a stay out of the shed, looking furious, and locking himself in. Even when called for meals, he'd say, "Just eat without me," or leave my portion by the door and go away, reducing the time spent with family. He avoided meeting my or our daughter's eyes, and she began to be scared of him. When he was home, she'd hide in her room. I had no real need to go near the shed, so I avoided it, waiting for him to come out if I needed him. Just being around the shed would sour his mood dramatically. A month later, I realized I needed to start planning for our daughter's birthday celebration. We had been talking about taking a trip. We hadn't done much since she was born, partly because of my husband's work, and partly because we didn't want to disturb others with a too young child. Now that she's grown into a considerate and kind child, I was thinking of splurging on a longer stay than just one night. That meant I might need the large suitcase we used before we were married, so I headed to the shed. I tend to take good care of my belongings, so it would still be usable, despite not having checked it for years due to its storage. My husband had warned me to stay away from the shed, but he was at work today, so it should have been fine. However, as I approached, I heard strange noises coming from the supposedly empty shed. Could it be a burglar? I wondered, peeking through the small window to check, only to find my husband and Emmy in the midst of an intense affair. It felt disgusting, like being forced to watch a cheap adult movie. Of course, the shock that my husband and Emmy were in such a relationship hit me hard, but deep down, I wasn't entirely surprised by his behavior considering recent attitudes. I had naively thought that since Emmy was a close friend, she would reject any advances from my husband. The betrayal by Emmy shook me more profoundly than the distrust towards my husband. When I peeked, their affair seemed to be ending, and they lay side by side, naked, chatting and laughing as if nothing had happened.
She seems clueless, doesn't she?
Given her trauma with love, I'd say she's pretty dense. There were times they felt I was somewhat suspicious, but they laughed, thinking I hadn't realized the extent of their relationship. Emmy said the thrill of not knowing when I might find out was irresistible. However, my husband was a bit cowardly about letting her into the house while I was away, fearing it would be too obvious, so they switched to the shed. They even joked about how disappointed they were that I obediently stayed away from the shed, making it less thrilling since I hadn't caught on, and now they were getting bold.
Scare a girl with love trauma, and she won't come near, right? I want more thrill. How about sneaking out in the middle of a weekday night next time?
Emmy knew my husband and I slept in the same room and was daring him to sneak out without getting caught by me. From the day he warned me off the shed, they had been meeting there on weekends. Emmy, getting carried away, made a shocking revelation. That girl, despite her plain looks, seemed to appeal to guys in high school because she appeared meek. Apparently, Emmy was annoyed that I, being less flashy than her, received attention from male students. And yet, she'd put herself down so obliviously, it drove me nuts, so I took every boyfriend she had. I never belittled myself. What was so wrong about asking someone who professed to like me what exactly they liked about me? The boyfriends I had always cited my quietness, seriousness, and kindness as their reasons, which seemed generic. Still, I was happy they liked me, and I tried to get to know and like them in return. I always thought mutual affection at the time of confession was rare. Learning that Emmy saw me this way and had snatched boyfriends out of jealousy saddened me deeply. Emmy claimed she never actually dated any of the guys she took from me, it was just a game to her. And she'd laugh about how shocked the guys were when she dumped them. I remembered on graduation day, one of my exes apologized for hurting me. I had thought it meant he was sorry for changing his mind after confessing, but after hearing Emmy's story, it clicked that he was apologizing for falling for Emmy's seduction and hurting me. Because it made all the strange things that happened in high school suddenly make sense. While listening to Emmy's boasts, my husband said, "I'm sick of looking at such an ugly face. People say beauties bore you after 3 days, but that's a lie. Facing an ugly person every day is true torture." Anger surged through me, my fists clenching with rage. Bursting through the door and confronting them was one option. But I realized that wouldn't be enough to beat them. They were two, and I was alone. Without evidence, my words would mean nothing, and I would be the one to lose. I thought the best course of action was to carefully plan my revenge while keeping my anger in check. Regarding our daughter's birthday trip, my husband had said he'd leave all the planning to me and our daughter, not participating in any discussions. Moreover, he decided not to join us, citing an absolutely unavoidable work commitment on the day of our daughter's birthday, saying he couldn't take the day off. His insistence on the unavoidable work made me realize he was probably planning to meet up with Emmy. Children often notice more than adults think, and our daughter had realized that her father's moodiness wasn't just about him being irritable. She was scared and didn't want to be in the same space as him, so for her, the fact that he wouldn't be joining the family trip seemed like a blessing. She seemed relieved when I told her. Truth be told, I had no intention of giving up on the trip just because my husband couldn't come. In fact, I was relieved he had opted out. Considering how scared my daughter was of him, a trip without him seemed like the perfect change of scenery. Originally, we had planned a domestic trip assuming my husband would join, as he said he could only take a few days off. But with him not joining, an international trip, which was what our daughter had wanted, became possible. I changed our domestic trip to an international one and extended the duration, sharing this update only with my daughter. When I told her to keep it a secret from Dad, she said, "I wouldn't tell Dad. I'm on your side, Mom." On the day of the trip, as we were heading to the airport by taxi, my daughter boasted, "I did well, didn't I?" saying she had locked up Dad's precious shed. The shed has a lock on the outside, but due to a small mistake by my husband, there are actually 2 keys for the outside. There's the original key that came with the container house and another key he installed on the outside by mistake, meant to keep our daughter from entering during dangerous work. He later added a lock that could only be locked from the inside, totaling 3 locks on the shed. The inside lock can only be operated from within. It wasn't summer yet, but the season could see significant temperature rises during the day. I figured they wouldn't dare use the shed for their secret meetings, especially without telling my husband about the lock situation, and boarded the plane. I remembered my husband once saying the shed felt like a sauna in the summer and wanted to install air conditioning. But I had refused, arguing that a fan and an open window were sufficient for a space only used on weekends. This decision would turn out to play into my plan for revenge. While staying at our travel destination, we received a cryptic message from my in-laws once. It seemed something unexpected had happened at home. But they insisted they'd handle it and told us to enjoy our trip with our daughter to the fullest. Of course, I intended to enjoy the trip with my daughter and had no plans to return early, even if there were issues at home. Because it meant my plan for revenge was unfolding successfully. After thoroughly enjoying the 2-week trip with my daughter, we returned home. Without delay, we went to my in-laws' house after dropping off our luggage, as my daughter wanted to give them souvenirs. I felt bad for using it as an excuse, but it served my purpose. At my in-laws' house, not only were my in-laws present, but my husband was there too, despite it being a time when he was supposed to be at work. He looked very haggard, with an unkempt beard that made him look more intimidating. Seeing him like this, my daughter recoiled and hid behind me. My in-laws immediately started apologizing profusely in front of me. Then my father-in-law began to explain what had happened while my daughter and I were on our trip. The atmosphere in the house was heavy, and seeing my daughter's near-tears face, my mother-in-law took her to another room to keep her company. Actually, I had arranged for my in-laws to use our home while we were away on our trip. After learning my husband wouldn't be joining the family trip, I heard from my in-laws about their plans for a minor renovation at their house. They wanted to do it during a period when they could use a grant, but were hesitant because the work would mean going without water for a while. Indeed, it wasn't summer, but the daytime temperatures could still be quite high, making the lack of water a significant inconvenience. So, I suggested they stay at our place. If we timed our departure with the start of their renovation, my husband would be at work during the day, and they could use the house without any awkwardness. They were very grateful for the suggestion, and plans moved forward. Later, when my husband said his unavoidable work had turned into a business trip, I told my in-laws they could stay over, as it wouldn't matter day or night. I suspected my husband was actually planning a trip with Emmy instead of going on a business trip. On the day, my daughter and I left the house just before noon. I had told my in-laws they were welcome to come over any time as we were leaving. The renovation was scheduled for the afternoon, and after greeting the contractors, they arrived around 2 p.m. Upon arrival, they discovered 2 people collapsed in the front yard. The shed door was also violently broken, indicating something serious had happened, leading to calls to the police and ambulance in a panic. Upon closer inspection, one of the collapsed individuals was my husband. The other was a woman, and for some reason, both were half naked. Both were semi-conscious, making communication difficult, leading my father-in-law to suspect heatstroke and call an ambulance. The relationship between the two was easy to guess, given they were found together in such a state. The commotion quickly became known to the neighbors, attracting onlookers. One neighbor began explaining how they heard loud noises and then saw a half-naked couple running out of the shed, noting the woman was not the wife, which made the relationship between the two widely known among those present. This wasn't part of my plan, but since my husband's actions became known throughout the neighborhood, I considered it a successful outcome. I'm grateful for my daughter's quick thinking. As I listened to my father-in-law, I put on an act of being shocked. When I was a child, concerned about my introverted nature, my mother had enrolled me in a children's theater group. Recalling the coaching from back then, I tried to act as naturally as possible, earning my father-in-law's sympathy as he harshly reprimanded my husband. I reassured my father-in-law that I was okay and then confessed that I had installed a camera in the shed. It was initially set up to catch evidence of my husband's affair, but I explained to my husband and in-laws that I installed it because I was scared of the strange noises coming from the shed, thinking they might be wild animals. I thought it was just animals, but who would have thought, my husband having an affair, right? I casually mentioned. As I said this and looked at my husband, he looked back at me with a look of "What have you done?" My father-in-law, sensing the urgency, pushed me to check the footage quickly. My mother-in-law offered to keep looking after our daughter, allowing us to rush back to our house. My husband was somewhat dragged along by my father-in-law, obviously reluctant since he didn't want the evidence of his deeds to be seen. That's because the evidence of the affair is still there, and he wouldn't want his father-in-law to see it. However, when we reached the shed, he began to throw a tantrum like a 3-year-old. My husband protested about privacy invasion and suddenly feeling dizzy, and when those excuses weren't accepted, he just yelled about it being irrelevant and that he didn't want this. I thought to myself, if you're doing something that you don't want seen or known, then you shouldn't do it in secret. He had enjoyed the thrill of possibly getting caught, so shouldn't he have been prepared for the possibility of getting caught? In the end, my husband couldn't stand against my father-in-law's force and had to enter the shed. My father-in-law has been practicing martial arts since he was young and still goes to the local dojo to teach kids. My physically inactive husband had no chance against him. The camera in the shed captured my husband sneaking back into the yard and into the shed after saying he was going on a business trip. The camera was discreetly installed not just inside the shed but also at the entrance to catch anyone unnoticed. Once inside, Emmy was already there waiting. It seems they had created a space in the hedge for one person to get through to the yard without me noticing, placing something in front of it that even a woman could move to deceive me. Waiting for my husband in the storage room, Emmy was already in her underwear and seemed eager to do it. My husband, perhaps lustful at the sight of her, jumped on Emmy like an animal and repeated the violent, constant action. There was a moment when their activity abruptly stopped, captured by the entrance camera, showing my daughter approaching the shed. Despite being engrossed in their actions, they seemed sensitive to any sounds. They could have waited for us to leave for their secret meeting, but choosing to meet while we were still home was part of the thrill they sought, I suppose. Once my daughter moved away from the shed area, they resumed. They probably hadn't considered that my daughter might lock the padlock from the outside. Later, the camera installed at the entrance recorded the sound of a taxi arriving and my voice calling to my daughter, "Let's go," clearly audible. This must have reached the ears of the two inside because, as the taxi drove away, the camera inside the shed captured them stopping their intimate actions and attempting to leave the shed. However, footage showed my husband's confusion as the door wouldn't open, and Emmy peering out through the small window, trying to figure out the door's situation. Even the slim Emmy seemed to struggle to exit through the small window because her shoulders got in the way. Unable to determine the door's condition and growing increasingly frustrated, my husband's tone became aggressive. "If that's the case, you can just dislocate your joints and squeeze through that small window. You're a man, act like it." "What? Wanting to feel the thrill and hiding before my wife leaves was your idea, not mine. I wouldn't be in this mess if I hadn't gone along with your thrill-seeking." The bickering that ensued between them, now far from their earlier affectionate behavior, had me struggling to hold back laughter. Trapped in the sealed shed, the temperature inside was rising rapidly. Unable to find a way out and without a key, the pair were sweating profusely, resembling people stuck in a sauna. Dehydrated from sweating, their risk of heatstroke skyrocketed, seemingly leading to the condition's onset. Both my husband and Emmy must have had their phones on them. They could have just called for emergency services while dressed, I thought. It seems people's judgment falters when they engage in guilty pleasures. My father-in-law seemed to have expected something like this, but facing the reality was different from just suspecting it. My husband, already facing a stern rebuke from my father-in-law, could only shrink smaller under his fiery wrath. I became so concerned that my father-in-law might collapse from his excessive anger that I found myself worrying more about him than the situation at hand. I was so busy trying to suppress my laughter that my body shook. My father-in-law mistook me for breaking down in tears. Using that to my advantage, I made it look like I was crying and said I couldn't go on. I wanted a divorce. While emotional wounds can't be healed with money, I expressed my desire for compensation in the form of alimony, to which my father-in-law strongly agreed, saying it was the right decision. He promised to make my husband pay alimony, and forced him, who hadn't uttered a single apology, to see my eyes and say sorry. My father-in-law also said he'd make my husband pay for a new place to live, reasoning that I wouldn't want to stay in a house tainted by infidelity. My husband started to object, saying, "Why should I?" but wilted under my father-in-law's gaze, sharper than any gang's, and meekly agreed to comply. Having been strictly disciplined by my father-in-law, a former athlete, since he was young, my husband has a tendency to follow his words, possibly out of trauma. Thanks to this, under my father-in-law's direction, everything went smoothly. After checking the camera and gathering my belongings, we returned to my in-laws' house, and then I moved to a hotel with my daughter. We decided to stay there until we found a new place, with my father-in-law insisting on my husband covering the costs. We opted for a rental apartment instead of a house, choosing a new building that was about to be completed and moving in as soon as it was ready. Right before we were set to move in, I received a call from Emmy. I could guess the gist of what Emmy wanted, but decided to answer to avoid any further complications. "Don't you dare contact my ex-husband, you ugly thing." Her true nature seemed to reveal itself through her vile language and classless shouting, further criticizing me in a shrill voice, telling me not to show off my happiness just because I'm plain, or saying I don't know how to please a man. It's audacious. Speaking of which, there was a conversation between my husband and Emmy on the camera where my husband criticized our intimate life, saying, "She just lies there like a decoration, so boring." Probably, my husband often complained that our marital life was dull. Because I thought your ex-husband was making a valid point. In fact, before I suspected the affair between Emmy and my husband, I received a call from someone claiming to be Emmy's ex-husband. He told me Emmy had vanished without paying alimony or child support. The message was about expanding Emmy's social circle to investigate her whereabouts. It seems someone suggested to him that I might know Emmy's whereabouts. When I received the call, Emmy had told me she was fleeing from an abusive ex, so thinking she was still being pursued post-divorce, I said I didn't know anything. But after learning the truth about Emmy and my husband, and her past betrayals, I asked a mutual friend about the real reason for Emmy's divorce. The friend didn't know the true reason. But they shared rumors that were completely different from what Emmy had told me. I then contacted the person who claimed to be Emmy's ex-husband, and heard a story very similar to the rumors. Emmy apparently had a child but showed no interest in parenting, always leaving the child with her ex-husband. She neglected child-rearing and household duties, indulging in flashy affairs. When her ex-husband reached his limit and initiated a divorce, Emmy left the child with him and disappeared. Though she agreed to pay alimony and child support at the time of the divorce, she never did. She vanished as if fleeing in the night, and he had been searching for her since. The child's photo he showed me looked exactly like Emmy as a child. I had known Emmy since elementary school. But we lost touch when she moved due to her father's job, only to reconnect in high school. Believing her ex-husband's story, I informed him of Emmy's location. And I told him everything she was doing to my husband.
Valid point? Ridiculous. I've always hated how you play the good girl. It's disgusting.
No matter what Emmy said, I ignored it. Engaging emotionally with someone like her was a waste. Even spending time on her felt like a waste. I told Emmy I would also demand compensation from her, which left her momentarily speechless. When I mentioned knowing everything she did in high school, she excused it as just a game and that the men misunderstood on their own. Emmy might see it as just a game, but among those caught up in her game, there were people who got hurt. At least, that was true for me and the ex-boyfriend who apologized to me. I told her we would communicate through lawyers in the future and hung up. Afterward, my husband returned to work, only to learn a hard lesson about not being arrogant. It seems he had a habit of looking down on those he considered beneath him. You know, the type who has one face for home and another for work. My husband was the textbook example, especially cruel to subordinates he deemed useless. One of these subordinates had coincidentally moved into our neighborhood and was among the onlookers when my husband was taken away half-naked by the ambulance. Even more, he had recorded it on his smartphone and spread it as payback for how he was treated at work. With the solidarity of other similarly mistreated subordinates, the spread of this video was incredibly fast, and naturally, the news of the affair became widely known. Feeling uncomfortable at work, my husband resigned, but due to his short tenure, his severance pay was minimal. He tried to seek refuge with my in-laws but was ignored and not even allowed inside their house. His attempts at finding a new job failed as it turned out he was all talk and no action, unable to secure employment. The relentless demands for child support and alimony meant he had to juggle multiple part-time jobs. I heard he's now in a position where he's being told he's less useful than a student part-timer, the very words he used to say to his subordinates. As a result, he keeps hopping from one job to another, unable to hold down a steady position. Since they can't accumulate a substantial amount of money, it seems they have no choice but to work without any days off. Emmy was taken back by her ex-husband and is now under strict surveillance by him and his family. She was dumped into a company known to her ex-husband, notorious for its harsh working conditions. It's a job that needs doing, but due to its danger and unpopularity, it pays well. Given that few people manage to stay long, it must be an environment more challenging than one can imagine. It seems Emmy is being reformed as a person, returning exhausted to the company dormitory every day without the spare energy to engage in affairs or snatch anyone's boyfriend. By the time payday arrives, her ex-husband has already deducted alimony and child support. In the end, they are left with an amount even lower than what a student part-time job would pay. Since she lives in a company dormitory, rent and utilities are deducted up front. Considering only food expenses are out of pocket, her ex-husband remarked that she should manage, informing me of Emmy's current situation. A few days later, I was notified that Emmy had attempted to escape due to the harsh conditions. But her movements were constantly monitored, and she was quickly found and brought back, receiving a severe reprimand that seemingly broke her spirit. Since then, there's been no sign of her trying to escape, and I've heard she's become quite submissive. My daughter and I have started a new life in our new home. Separated from my husband and knowing she wouldn't have to meet him unless she wanted to, my daughter has gradually returned to her cheerful self, stabilizing emotionally after the turmoil caused by my husband's behavior. Actually, I've always enjoyed obtaining certifications, and during my college years and even after getting married, I acquired several through distance learning. One of them has been particularly useful in job transitions. Though I became a stay-at-home mom after getting married and giving birth, I worked from home as much as I could. Now, I've decided to work full-time at an office. I might make my daughter feel a bit lonely, but I believe she'll understand. From now on, it's just the two of us, side by side, living a happy life, I told her. My daughter confidently replied, "I'll protect Mommy." It seems this ordeal has taught my daughter something profound. I've vowed to live each day to the fullest to protect my daughter's smile.